Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Murder Church. Publicly Buzzed Live is on the air. My hat is crooked. What is going on? Thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it. Yeah, we are going to be going into week 11, if anybody can believe that. I cannot. That is crazy to me. Almost 3 months into this currently. And I think we still have about 3 months left. We're about halfway there. This is a very long and intricate trial. Again, the Jeffrey Dahmer insanity trial. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. Holy crap. Love to see it. Let's just go through the chat here real quick, see what's going on early. Jay, per usual, what is going on? Yeah, I might have a dog cam figured out here. Shannon wanted to see the pup, and I have an extra app on my phone that I now have, I think, put into OBS. And I believe I can probably just turn it on and get old Gypsy on here. So we'll see what happens there. Dizzy, thank you so much for coming through here. We're going to get more hashtags. Get them all going, baby. Shannon, thank you so much for coming through. Life, Love, True Crime. Art with Viv. Tangled Crochet. Kelly Gale. Again, Viv. Disney Nerd. Denise. Bonnie. Sarah, thank you guys all. Kristen, good morning. And then Jay had the best quote of the day thus far. Maybe the real treasure wasn't the murder trial of Jeffrey Dahmer. Maybe it was the friends we made along the way. I love that. Maybe it was, Jay. Thank you all so much. Yes, there it is. Bam, 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 bam. Everybody coming through. Bobby coming through here. City Kitty. Yeah, they're still coming through, piling up in here. Megsy. Wouldn't be a murder church without Megsy. Usually the MVP. Jip is good. She had a little bit of a rough day yesterday. We're changing her from, she's still on the same diet, hypoallergenic diet, but she's on wet food that is extremely expensive, and we're trying to get her over to a dry food, which is still extremely expensive, but it will be a little bit better ultimately if we can get her over to the dry food. Anybody that has dogs knows cans of wet food is usually even more expensive if they're not insanely like a prescription food like she has to have. But yeah, she's doing a lot better. The last 2 weeks have been absolutely amazing. She's got her energy back. She's eating regularly. She's using the bathroom regularly. Yeah, there's still a little bit of some stuff that we've got to do with this vet specialist. We're going to Virginia Tech. Again, seeing an actual specialist. We had to leave our area. The vets here could not figure what was going on with her for basically a year. Yeah, and I believe what she has is called proctitis. We're going to they're trying to get her on a med, I'm trying to remember all the words here. Prednisone, trying to get her on prednisone. They're going to get her on a full 40 milligram prednisone pill per day to start out. We're going to try to taper that off to see how low of a dose that we can get to basically where she'll just be normal, because she has a little bit of issues using the bathroom. But since the hypoallergenic diet change, it's been amazing. We've went through a lot this last year, so I'm very happy, and thank you for asking, Sarah, per usual. And yeah, Kim, I see you. What's going on? Deborah? Oh yeah, we will. I wish you could make us a breakfast and bring that on over. Todd, what's going on? Not much. Having a good weekend. Coming into Murder Church. Oh, we got to ring the bells though. Hopefully the bells work this morning. Let's see. See if you guys can hear this. You guys hear that? That coming through? Okay. I hope so. Hopefully the bells are a-ringing for the folks. I sure hope so. Deborah, how you doing this morning? Good morning. Shannon in coming through with a $10 for Sweet Gypsy's expensive food. Yeah, that is not food. Thank you very much. I really honestly appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yep, the bill's coming through. We are off to a good start. Yeah, she's doing a lot better. Thanks. Hey, it is what it is. If she's feeling better, then I'm happy. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can open this door and start this out with a little bit of Gypsy. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and move this over here. We will be starting off with Dr. Samuel Friedman, his part 2 testimony continuing, and we're going to be going through a few people today. I believe some people that are anonymous that we actually won't see on the stand completely. But yeah, let me go ahead and start this up. Let's see if I can get a Gypsy cam going here. Oh, let me get the sound going.
And while you're looking at that, I would like to review a moment some of the things I said yesterday and get your attention again, and so we can get some continuity despite the overnight break. I hope you slept well. I did. I was telling you that as a clinical psychologist, I was attempting to render my best professional opinion addressing the issue of the defendant's state of mind at the time of commission of the crimes. That as a psychologist, I reviewed extensive records, police documents, professionals who had evaluated him over the last few years. I saw Mr. Dahmer on 3 occasions. I interviewed members of his family, and I attempted to observe him. I took note of what his life history was prior to the commission of the crimes, focusing on the crimes themselves, what he was like afterward, and certainly at the time I saw him. I administered what is called a mental status examination, and I told you some of those results, which I will summarize. And this morning, I would like to tell you about the test results. I did give him 3 tests, and one of them is a test called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. That comes out with an answer sheet, which I cannot show you because it tends to make obvious to the public and to you the kinds of items that are used on the test. It's a true-false instrument. The test is scored either by hand or by computer, and the test results are imprinted on a profile sheet, which is before you. That is Jeffrey Dahmer's profile.
Why, Deborah? Why? I need to start doing that. I'm trying to get healthier here. Charlotte, welcome in. Well, Charlotte is coming to America, folks. I don't know if anyone knows that. Coming in.
The date of testing as January 4, 1992. The test is most useful in a situation where you're attempting to uncover the individual's psychopathology, abnormalities, what kind of quirks, what kinds of problems he or she has. It's used in both outpatient settings and in hospital settings. It is recognized as the most valid personality test of all the many hundreds of tests used. It is valid in the sense that it measures what it is supposed to measure.
Dude, British slang is my favorite thing ever. I've mentioned this many times on this show. I love British TV and comedy. It's the best. My favorite thing that I've ever heard from a television show was from the show called Ideal, and it's this dude on the show is called Psycho Paul, and he called this lady a dizzy bitch, and I lost it. I was like, what? Like this confused lady. It's like, you dizzy bitch.
And what it measures here is an individual's abnormalities. The test was constructed by comparing the item responses of a large group of normal people that provide a standardization and larger subgroups of abnormal individuals with particular diagnoses. And at this point, I could tell you that the diagnoses at the time the test was standardized in 1939 are substantially different from the diagnoses that are used today. And I believe you will likely be instructed that the kind of diagnosis
Morning, Gnome Bray. How are you?
Is arbitrary. As you heard yesterday, diagnoses are merely guides. I will go over some of the diagnoses with you and attempt to clarify the difference between what was true in 1939 and what is true today in 1992. So I will proceed to the projector and show you a few things to help you understand what Mr. Dahmer was like in January of 1992. How can I best be heard? Is this okay? From him.
Got a map, diagram.
Doctor, I think the important thing is that you project your voice well. First of all, we have to have the jurors hear you, we have to have counsel hear you, and we don't have a record unless the court reporter hears you.
Right. Well, if all those people cannot safely understand, please let me know. I am not good at shouting, but I will...
I don't have any problem. Okay, if any member of the jury has a problem hearing a doctor at any point, you kindly raise your hand. The court reporter, I think, knows what to do if she can't hear.
Please. Okay. As the test is represented, the left portion of the test from the dark vertical line over...
Oh my God, Alan Partridge, yes. Charlotte, did you see my opening for Dan's birthday? Oh my God, yes. I'm a huge Alan Partridge fan. I love British comedy in general. Like, Ideal was an amazing show. Peep Show. God, what was that one? There's like a show that's almost like... I'll have to Google it. It's almost like the British version of Friends, except more dirty.
Under where it says male are validity scales. One of the positive features of the test is that not only...
Coupling is fucking hilarious. So many though, man. I've went on like big binges of some British comedy before in my life, but yeah, I could rewatch a lot of that stuff as well. But Peep Show's my favorite, my all-time favorite for sure.
Tells you what it measures, but it tells you about the test-taking attitude of the patient, whether he was defensive, whether he lied, whether he tried to look good, whether he tried to look bad, and what his attitude was. So that helps you interpret his scores. Right of the dark vertical line are these...
See, I don't even care, Kelly. Everyone's all hating on the C word. Cunt, I'll say it, damn it. It's one of my favorite words. And I know that people don't seem to like it, but I'm a vulgar person. What can I say?
Scores on a variety of abnormal conditions that are found out there in the world in 1939 as well as in 1992. A way of understanding the squiggles here, which is why the test is called multiphasic, is as follows. If you think of the first three scales, I don't know whether you can see the fine print. They are labeled HS or 1, D or 2, HY or 3. These are the scales that are considered to be...
Oh yeah, the QI is an awesome show. Hilarious.
Psychoneurotic disorders.
Oh my God. The Dan intro ended with, do you remember that bit from Alan Partridge when it's so fucking random, but it stuck with me because of Dan's name. But he's, actually I've got a sound clip too, hold on.
Dan's a fantastic man.
Damn, it isn't playing. Fuck. For whatever reason, whatever we did, messed that one up. But it was when Alan Partridge was showing up to, it was just some random area, and they get out of the car, and he says, "Oh, there's Dan." And, no one wants to fucking talk to Alan Partridge. He's like, "Oh, hey, Dan." And Dan even looks back and sees him and just starts speed walking away. And he's like, Dan, 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 Dan. Oh, he must not have heard me. He just starts looking back like... God, yeah. British comedy's the best.
Palermo told you yesterday...
Please go watch the very beginning, Charlotte, of the birthday stream from Thursday. Just the opening. Just check out the opening.
Often considered...
Oh my God, yes.
People who are not mentally ill. Psychologists in general don't use the term mental illness or even recognize that anyone is sick. These are people with disorders, with behavioral reactions. It's not necessary to think of people as ill or sick. But whatever they are, these would be the lesser degrees of disturbance, sometimes called the walking well, individuals who seek counseling by psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, and so forth. The first scale here is HS for hypochondriasis, which is no longer used. In 1992, that scale would be called somatic.
Oh no! I literally just Googled British comedy to get my mind refreshed. And Fleabag, I watched the first couple of episodes, or maybe even the first season of Fleabag, and it did hit. It was awesome. I actually did dig it. Of course, the original Office is fucking amazing. I honestly like the British original Office better than all of the American, which I love the American. It's the best, but there's something about the way the British one hits, man. There was another show I was trying to find, though. What's the one with, like, all the kids that are always getting into mischief and hanging out? Oh, of course, the IT crowd. Holy crap. All right, I'm going off on a tangent.
Disorder. This is the
Inside number 9.
Preoccupation with his physical
Spaced.
condition. He has lots of
God.
aches and pains and complaints. The scale goes up. I should interrupt to point out to you that these two horizontal lines represent a rough range of normality. Nearly every scale is above that range, suggesting that the individual taking the test is acutely disturbed. He's upset, he's uncomfortable with himself, he is indicating that he has many, many problems in many areas. The second scale is depression, which today, in 1992,
In-Betweeners. That is exactly what I was trying to freaking think of. Yes, the one with the Faulty Towers, too, is a classic. It's randomly just in front of me. I fucking do love British comedy, guys. But yes, The In-Betweeners is fucking gold, man. There's a movie of that one. There's another one, Dinner Party, maybe? Oh, man. So many fucking good British. I need to actually get caught up because it's, which, I mean, I don't watch any TV today, guys. I just put all of my life into this channel and trying to grow it and come up with content, and I study true crime. But, you know, I love TV and I love movies, man. I love classic movies. But British TV always hits me different. It does. I get it for some reason. Phone Shop, another good one.
Dysthymia, if you hear that term. It's a difficult Greek word, means difficulty in mood.
My Discord private is just going to be us watching British comedies. Seasons and seasons, man. Ideal. If no one's actually ever watched Ideal, it's about a guy that sells weed out of his apartment. It's the craziest fucking show ever. Okay, there's a character called Cartoon Head that wears a fucking mouse head on his, and then if you go for a long period of time before you even find out why he's got the mouse head on his head. Again, Psycho Paul's a character on there. You have a neighbor that is in a gimp suit constantly, doing weird ass shit. Multiple seasons. It's fucking nuts is what it is. It's hilarious. And you're really seeing all the characters that come through. I believe the main character's name is Maz. This dude's apartment, and buying weed, picking up weed. And oh man, there's this gay dude that comes through all the time, and every time he comes through, he has a different boyfriend with him. And he's actually, I think he's one of the creators of the show too. And he's fucking hilarious, man. Like, it's a great show. If you haven't seen Ideal, check it out.
There are some indications here of depression or dysthymia. HY is the third scale.
Just for reference.
That term is no longer used. It is hysteria.
You know, I'm not completely fucking crazy. You'll start probably be like I'm still crazy. Look at this. Cartoon Head. Right here. This is a character on this television show, folks. It's the best. This is Psycho Paul. Right here. He's the leader of a gang, and he'll fuck you up. Actually, he's the bitch of this guy. I believe this guy's name is Roach, if I'm not mistaken. God. I'm on probation. Oh my God, this show, I gotta rewatch it. This is now Jeffrey Dahmer and British comedy together.
Associative reaction. It refers to individuals who repress their feelings, who also develop somatic symptoms or dissociate or engage in denial. That scale is not terribly high.
Yes.
The middle two scales are considered character personality disorder scales, 4 and 5.
Fucking dank.
His highest score is on the 4 scale. The 4 scale in the original version of the test is labeled as psychopathic deviant. And that's a good illustration of how terms change. Back before even I practiced, which is shortly after the cooling of the earth, the individual diagnosis was called CPI, a term which is even terrible to think about because it was called constitutional psychopathic inferior. You wouldn't want to know a CPI. But that term was later changed to psychopath or psychopathic deviant. In more contemporary terms, it was changed from character disorder to personality disorder. And this is the diagnosis that Dr. Palermo and and I both agree is his primary diagnosis. The term paraphilia, which you've heard used, is not reflected in these diagnoses. It's relatively recent. It appeared with the DSM-3R. At the time the test was established in 1939 and up to DSM-2, which was in the 1950s, the paraphilias, same behavior, same disorders, were considered sexual deviations and were reflected in the PD scale, which you will notice is Mr. Dahmer's highest scale. Scale 5, which is a form of character disorder scale, is MF, MF standing for masculinity, femininity, and merely indicates the kinds of responses that are characterized by males in our society as opposed to females in our society. Mr. Dahmer gives responses which are a trifle unusual for males, or a little higher than expected, but not dramatically so. From scale 6 on is considered a psychotic portion, the more serious forms of behavior disorders or mental illnesses, as you wish. The scales in order are scale 6, paranoia, scale 7, a very strange term called psychasthenia. Psychologists, psychiatrists like to take words from...
A lot of people like the American version of Shameless too. I've never watched either one of those, but I've heard it. Even the UK one's amazing, which it's the first one. Yeah, hit that like, everybody. Everybody randomly coming through here, please hit that like. Really helps us out here. Gets us into the old algorithm there on YouTube. Sub up if you randomly come through, if you get this far. If you've gotten past my random British comedy rant, hit the 3 little dots on the side. Make sure all notifications are turned on. That way you don't miss any community posts, any videos, or any live streams, which are happening all the time here on Publicly Buzzed. And yeah, make sure you're also following Jay, who is here in the chat, if you're not. And yeah, thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it, guys. And share this out. Share this out to your communities. I'll put this on Twitter as well. Please repost, retweet, whatever the hell you want to call it. But let people know what you're watching. Let people know that you're hanging out on Sunday morning at Murder Church, baby. And I'm not sure if everybody heard them. I don't hear those either. What the hell have I done? Do you guys hear those? Hopefully you hear them. Let me know in the chat if you guys hear those. I'm going to fuck something up on my end. Per usual. Only Dan's is probably still asleep. He did get a link. He did get a link, just so everyone knows. Okay, sweet. All right. Well, good. Good to know. The extra bells are out there. So can you guys hear this one? Shit. Nice. Hopefully you guys can look at this. Look at this. Hey Steve, speaking of Shameless, the best actor on the show is the lead of The Bear. I'm gonna watch The Bear. I swear to God, Sarah, The Bear's gonna be happening soon. But I really do. I have no actual real time. When I do watch stuff, like I watch a little bit. When I actually wind down after these shows, or when I get done editing, I like put on something stupid, usually like cartoons or like or even stand up or a podcast or something. But I need to get into. I want to watch The Bear. Man, there's actually a lot of stuff that I want to catch up on. Sometimes I will still catch a new movie if if it really piques my interest, which is again rare. But The Bear does look dope as hell, and I love Maddie Matheson. I'm a big food guy, so I kind of knew about it coming up just because of Maddie. Man, I follow him on YouTube. I watch his food videos. See, I just need to watch The Bear though. I know it looks fucking dope though. I think it's gonna be good.
Or Greek, psychasthenia means weakness of the mind, but was the scale that was designed for individuals with fears, with obsessions, with compulsions. Scale 8 is the most frequent major mental disorder behavior problem known as schizophrenia, and you've all heard of that. That is his second highest scale. Scale 9 is designated MA, which is short for hypomania, which is a lesser degree of mania or overactivity. Scale 0 is SI for social introversion. It doesn't represent a major mental disorder, but merely gives you a picture of whether the individual is more extroverted, outgoing, people-oriented, or introverted, withdrawn into himself. That is his lowest scale toward the extroverted end. Over here, there are 4 scales which are popularly used, and they're considered auxiliary scales that give you additional information. The scale here is worthy of attention. It is labeled MAC for McAndrew. It is very high, up to 40. There are only 46 items available. The scale is designed to pick up or diagnose individuals with personalities which are associated with alcohol, severe alcohol problems, the likelihood of alcohol addiction, or the term that was used yesterday, alcohol dependence. So that would be a likely secondary diagnosis that would be compatible with that. The profile itself is diagnostically most compatible with a serious personality disorder. Not to inflate my credentials any more than necessary, I did study under the test author Stark R. Hathaway. I've used the test, I've given workshops in the test, classes in the test. I am still called on, usually by others in the state of Wisconsin, for interpretations. I am quite comfortable, however, with the idea that other expert interpreters, and there are many throughout the country, classify this particular profile in the same way I do, which is a serious personality disorder, albeit an individual who perceives himself in distress, as in the elevated D score, and also...
This one's bad, Kelly. I will totally admit that. This might be the worst one we've had in the 11 weeks so far, and that's no disrespect whatsoever at all to this doctor, but yeah, he's not exactly keeping me up and at him, if you will. But yeah, Kelly, I'm right on board with that. And yeah, after this testimony, we will be switching gears. It won't be him for just on and on and on, which we still got about an hour here with him. But yeah, so I'm with you.
On the psychotic end, clearly indicating present discomfort, potential for more aggravated adjustment.
Try to keep it as interesting as possible.
Having looked at the tests that preceded this, going back to 86 and 89, this end in December and January,
there we go,
of the last couple months, is more elevated.
There we go.
And I interpreted,
there we go,
this particular test is indicating...
You guys help me out with something real quick? I'm going to try, one thing I like that Jay can do really well that I fucking suck at is my sound, my voice to the video. Like, Jay can have it to where, like, he has, like, really good sound quality when he talks into the mic per the video, and you can still hear him pretty well. So I'm going to try to do that right now. So how does my mic sound right now? Is it too crazy compared to the video? Like if I just randomly talk, can you hear me clearly over this video, like right now, for example?
No regard to privacy with conditions.
Testing. How clear can you hear me over top of the video?
One's mental state.
Sound quality might be my one downfall right now. It's the one thing that I'm working on daily, trying to get better. My newest video that I've been hyping up as being the one that I put the most time into. The only thing right now I need to work on is my sound on it. I have to go back and actually redo all of the sound because I want it to pop. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So over the actual video, sweet. It's louder than the video right now, sweet. All right, cool. That's what I was kind of going for.
And was substantially lower. I don't have that profile to show you.
Hopefully not.
So that is the results of the MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. You may want to take that down if you wish.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Whatever a piece of paper goes across the end.
Oh God, he was also the lip. I'll keep pausing. He was also the lip smacker.
Okay, that essentially is the results in my interpretation of the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. That was one of the 3 tests I used to evaluate Mr. Dahmer. The other 2 were the Rorschach ink blots and the thematic apperception test. These are both projective tests.
Yeah, if I go on any kind of tangent, like I'm doing literally right now, I will continue to pause it, Bobby. But I do like to randomly, if I have something to say, short and sweet, that you could still hear me clearly. Uh-oh. Well, I got it paused here. Bonnie Bailey going to come through. Passing the plate. Starting out the collection plate. Thank you, Bonnie. Appreciate that. Hopefully I can hear this one. Let's see. Give me the loop. Give me the loop. Yeah, weird. Well, I'm glad you guys can. I'll have to figure that out on my end. I can hear that one. They're random. I might have to redo that whole thing. We were messing around, as you guys know, anybody was here for Feral Friday. We were messing around with sound before the show, and a few things got messed up. But if you guys can still hear it, that's awesome. Kim Fabuloso, boom, coming through with $3. Thank you, Kim. Appreciate that. Adding to the plate as well. Boom, I'll give you that one as well. I think you can hear it. That one I can hear. Lisa, the psychosis claim is not plausible in my opinion. No one would be psychotic for that long. Yeah, I think they did the right thing in the Jeffrey Dahmer trial. I've said that, after all the weeks, I honestly do. Megsy, what I remember is that Dahmer is an extrovert and extremely disturbed. Only one of those is surprising. Shannon, a lot of people don't know this, but when you hit the mute button by accident, you lose sound.
Which I explained to you a little about yesterday. The individual is given a chance to impose his own personality traits, values, states onto the test material. The MMPI is the objective test that gives you actuarial, computerized interpretations, and my whole career has tended to emphasize the value of objective tests, but the projective tests, in this case, the Rorschach and the TAT, yielded similar results. He looked at 10 Rorschach cards, gave me 13 responses. He was able to see the things that most people see, which are...
Uh-oh. Tangled Crochet, gonna pass it around. $10 with a heart. Thank you, Tangled. Appreciate that. Give me the loop. Give me the loop. Oh. I haven't played it yet today, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Get it out of the way here. A little Jim Leahy.
I'm sober enough to know what I'm doing, and I'm drunk enough to really enjoy doing it.
I thought so, Shannon. I thought so. Thank you so much, Tangled Crochet. Now, one of my favorite things that you can do now, folks, is give double J's in the chat. Double J's. Double J's. Double J's. Boom. Let me give you one of these right here. Give you one of these.
Son of a bitch!
Called popular responses. I perhaps should have brought you in one. I'm allowed to show you one card, but there's one that nearly everybody says is either a bat or a butterfly, and that's exactly what Mr. Dahmer saw. Some of the cards have colors, some have shading. He gave me 13 responses that are absolutely conventional, popular. A trade term is mundane, meaning that they are used throughout the world. He was somewhat defensive, which is true of many, many individuals who are either under arrest or in incarceration settings. They tend to clam up and they don't produce as much as they should, although Mr. Dahmer's history is one of not giving of himself to educational-like tasks throughout his academic career. The TAT, these stories, are things that you would popularly expect from normal adolescents and adults all over. They are so trivial that they are not striking enough to give you any examples of abnormality. I would opine that the average psychologist looking at the Rorschach and TAT responses would likely pick up that these were defensive individuals who are not giving of themselves, but they would not pick up any evidence of either neuroses or psychoses, such as I illustrated on the slide projector for you. So we have a situation where the objective test, the MMPI, was the most helpful diagnostically. And those are, in general, the results of the tests and my interpretation of them. I would like to go over my concluding paragraph, which summarized my findings, and hope to make that clear to you. I said that a summary of my test and clinical findings is consistent with the DSM-3R diagnosis of 301.90. I could have said and should have said that I am also considering all the records I reviewed. I am considering my interview impressions, facts from the history as I gathered from him, his relatives, and others. And this all led to the embracing concept of 30190, personality disorder not otherwise specified. As you heard yesterday, this diagnosis replaced the formerly used diagnosis in the previous nomenclature handbook called mixed personality disorder, which is to say that he has features of many personality disorders, but it is difficult to pick out one that is so paramount or so striking you'd want to apply that label, so you're safer off with mixed and indicate that he has features of other disorders. And in my report, I said that the diagnosis, personality disorder not otherwise specified, includes features of, I won't read you the code numbers because they're confusing, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which indicates that he has repetitious ideas and rituals that go over and over again, borderline personality disorder, a lengthy history of maladjustment with difficulty in maintaining relationships and often exhibiting problematic behaviors, and sadistic personality disorder, which reflects the nature of the crimes with which he is charged. I must say at this point that if I wanted to modernize my thinking and use the term paraphilia, I was struck with some of the testimony, particularly by my colleague, Dr. Becker, and assuming that she elicited from her interviews a greater preoccupation with bodies of the dead than I elicited, I certainly would be willing to indicate that Mr. Dahmer does exhibit paraphilic or necrophilic features. If this were true, I would yet maintain that as a paraphile, he falls within the larger, much larger category of individuals who behave in the way they do, but who are not psychotic. Mr. Dahmer is not psychotic. At the time of the evaluation, Mr. Dahmer is judged to be inaccessible to psychotherapy. He is not motivated. The prison setting is not conducive to psychotherapy anyway. But as a psychologist, I am interested in him as a person, no matter how horrible the crimes, and hoping that something can be done to reconstruct this individual who certainly has assets of youth and intelligence. So I say a later effort in this regard is warranted. In addressing the issue of criminal responsibility, which is what I was told to do, it can be stated that there is no substance to an NGI plea, not guilty by reason of insanity. At the time of the alleged offenses, Mr. Dahmer was fully able to appreciate right from wrong and to conform his conduct to the dictates of the law. And I indicated to the judge if he had any questions, he could ask me. This might be an opportunity.
We're back, baby.
That would conclude my findings.
Doctor, I think that's the role of the lawyers in the case. Mr. Boyle, cross-examination.
Good morning, Dr. Fitzgerald.
Good morning, Mr. Boyle.
Doctor,
For everybody that doesn't know, Friday night I tried to get another bong emoji into the chat here, and they immediately struck it down. Hold on, I'll get the email up.
I'm going to
I got it in.
try
I got to
hopefully-
put it. The first time I did it, it went on for at least a month or two before they struck it down. But this one is pretty blatantly a bong. I didn't do anything that I said I was going to do. I said I was going to try to trick them and do maybe like a squid bong. No, this is what I did.
ask you to educate me and the jury on some questions that are troublesome, okay?
Fine.
Now, the test is, you conclude there's no substance to the insanity defense. What you mean by that is that since there is no evidence, as far as you are concerned, that he was suffering from a mental disease, the first prong of the test has not been met. You know what you mean?
Both prongs, not the number.
First prong is not met. There's no mental disease.
We're concentrating on the first. Yes, okay.
And if there's no mental disease, then everyone can conform their conduct to the requirements of law, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm unable to persuade, pursuant to my burden, that there was a mental disease, any person...
Hey, look at this. Sons of bitches. Well, hold on, give me 1 second.
situated in your professional posture would say, then I cannot find as a psychological basis that a person couldn't conform their conduct to requirements of law.
Look at this shit. So, this is what I got for my bong emoji, which, I mean, yeah, I could show it off real quick, too, on Canva. Hold on. Your custom emoji was removed. Hit it with it. Hold on. Your custom emoji was removed. Your custom emoji has been removed because it has been found to violate YouTube's community guidelines. Remember that your custom emoji must comply with YouTube's channel memberships policy, terms of service, and community guidelines. Blatant violations of these policies may result in a strike against your channel. This is the second time I've done this, and no strike yet. Fingers crossed there. But, and they can let me edit my emoji. I'm going to turn it into a fucking squid. But, what? Dude, more than half the states in this country have actually legalized marijuana, I believe. And then I know more than half have medical marijuana in this country. Come on, YouTube. What are we doing here? What are we fucking doing? I'm 100% on Bob's side on this, right? And YouTube's headquarters is definitely, I would imagine, is in California, which has been at the end of this thing since the beginning. Marijuana laws. Like, what the fuck? Hold on. I'll also show you the actual blog I put in.
Test goes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, we hear this word psychosis often in this courtroom.
Hey, morning, Jamie. Thanks for coming in here, brother. Give me 1 sec. I'll get the bong.
How many psychoses are there? Strike that. Let me ask you this way. Are all people who you people call psychotic or having a psychosis then mentally ill?
Well, again,
So this is what I was trying to get away with. It's obviously blatant. It's very blatant. I didn't try to hide anything, but some maybe literally one or two people at the very beginning of Feral Friday, at the very first of the chat, may have seen this before I seen the little email pop up that you have violated our community guidelines and you can suck my dick.
again, as I indicated to the jury, it depends on who is doing the labeling.
Okay, let me ask you then. I tell you, I say assume that I have a friend and his name is Mr. Smith and there's something wrong with him and you see him and you say, you were right, Mr. Smith is psychotic. Does that mean he's mentally ill?
Yeah, in saying he's psychotic, I guess due to my training and experiences, I adopt the traditional framework of all diagnosticians and would say to you he is mentally ill, just as in the courtroom today, I have to grapple with problems of what constitutes sanity and insanity,
Sure.
which the literature says have often poor correspondence with psychological, psychiatric studies.
I just missed something you said there. Would you repeat just the latter part of what you said? Or repeat your answer, please.
Yeah, I said I can rephrase it perhaps.
Please.
That as I sit here, I have to grapple with an often poor correspondence between the sanity issues, which are a legal term, and the issues of psychological, psychiatric practice, which are
Of course.
not the same.
Two different disciplines, I understand it.
Yes.
That's why I'm asking these questions. In the question of logic, are all people in your profession that are found to be psychotic suffering from a mental illness?
It is more likely that a large sample of psychiatrists would agree that they're mentally ill than a large sample of psychologists, although the preponderance of psychologists, if asked whether or no, would agree that that's mental illness.
Now, let's take the two groups, the great body of psychiatrists who would say psychotics, people who are psychotic or suffering from a psychosis are mentally ill. Would that mean that under the ALI test, they would also say that that mental illness is a mental disease?
My experience in doing forensic work tells me that in some cases, yes, in some cases, no.
So what you're saying to me is, if I had psychiatrist A, and he says, Mr. Smith is suffering from a psychosis, I conclude that to be a mental illness, but I don't conclude it to be a mental disease for the legal purposes. He could say that.
That's correct.
And the next psychiatrist would say, you know, I find the same psychosis in Mr. A, and I also consider it
Need to get Austin in here to help me design one, right?
to be a mental illness, and I think it's a mental disease within the concept of the legal definition.
Maybe
True?
right. You may be right. I was just talking out of my ass there. I don't know. I'm gonna look it up.
I might add
I'm looking it up.
worse than that, if you wish me to
Please.
expound,
Yeah.
that it will co-vary with what side of the adversary process the psychiatrist is likely
Tell me it's not in
on.
Silicon Valley.
Even among
It's in
honest
California.
practitioners.
It's in
Let's
California.
take it out of the courtroom. Let's just take
San
it
Bruno,
as,
California.
you know, we're having an academic discussion on PBS, and we take it out of the courtroom. So that the effect of their finding is going to make any difference to anyone other than the educational process, all right?
All right.
Oh,
Then what I've said is right. Psychiatrist A,
I feel that, Bobby.
psychosis, mental illness, not mental disease. Psychiatrist B, psychosis, mental illness, mental disease, right?
Perfectly possible.
Now, the examiner of these two psychiatrists on this panel would say, define psychosis, so that we can then go to A and B and find out why these very brilliant people, and I mean that sincerely, why these brilliant people, on the one hand, find a disease, on the other hand, the other guy doesn't find a disease. So therefore, I ask you to help us and tell me what a psychosis is.
Good examination question. A psychosis is a serious form of behavior and/or mental disorder in which there are disturbances of either the sense of reality or reality itself.
How is it that reasonable psychiatric doctors and, well, I'm only going to psychiatrists now because you said psychologists disagree more so than even do psychiatrists. How could the reasonable psychiatrist say that a person who is psychotic, who is suffering from a mental illness, that mental illness is not a disease?
Well, there are a couple problems involved. One bears on the well-known fact in our field that psychiatric diagnosis is horribly unreliable, meaning that psychiatrists don't agree among themselves to begin with. The other problem is the individual psychiatrist's notion of the correspondence of his findings to the so-called legal tests.
Okay. Now, this same academic discussion with these same psychiatrists, we say to them, assume that the law says, Dr. A and B, that a mental disease is an impairment of the mind. And the questions then put to Dr. A and B, is the psychosis that you
More to
find
Brooklyn.
Impairment of the mind? Would they both answer that yes?
May not,
Really?
because the term impairment of the mind may not have sufficient specificity and be corresponding to their training. They may make their individual interpretations of that term.
If I were to ask you if Jeffrey Dahmer at the time he committed these offenses was suffering from an impairment of the mind, what would you say?
I would have to hedge because I am not clear as to what that means relative to my training and diagnostic skills.
So therefore, if I say to you, doctor, you say that he was not suffering from a mental disease because he did not have an impairment of the mind, you would say, well, you can't, can you say that he didn't have an impairment of the mind?
Well, perhaps the best way to answer that would be to indicate that I did append a diagnostic label, and it's close enough to the DSM-3R, which, as you pointed out yesterday, says Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So that's close to impairment of the mind.
Okay. Now, when Jeffrey Dahmer was doing the things he was doing with whatever his mind was all about, would the thing that he was doing, as the law says, this impairment of the mind, was it enduring or transitory? Do you understand those words?
Sure.
What do those words mean, enduring or transitory?
Well, it would be similar to chronic or acute, which is the more typical psychiatric psychological language. Enduring would be lasting for considerable lengths of time. Transitory would mean it comes and goes.
Okay, what about with Jeffrey Dahmer? He indicated that he didn't have a mental disease, but whatever he was doing in his mind, was that an enduring thing or was it transitory?
What I indicated as a personality disorder was of an enduring nature.
So it was going on for a long period of time?
Yes.
Okay. whatever his mindset was, which you say was not psychotic, it was enduring, it was going over a long period of time. Did it affect his mental processes?
Yes, I think the entirety of his lifespan, conceptualized, it would affect everything he said and did.
How about his emotional processes?
Similarly.
Okay, now, whatever his mindset was, when whatever he was doing, did whatever he had in his mind, this enduring problem, because it was a problem, disorder is a problem, right?
Yes, sir.
Did it substantially affect his mental and emotional processes?
The disorder is always there, so it is.
So it affected it?
Yes.
Substantially?
Yeah, substantially or insubstantially, it is
Sure.
just, it's a given.
So I want to go back then to what you tell us to do when you got Dr. A saying that this person's psychosis is a mental illness, which is a mental disease. This person's psychosis is a mental illness, but is not a mental disease. Help us decide how we can make a judgment as to whether Dr. A or Dr. B knows what they're talking about.
It would pertain to my belief in the jury system. I believe that 10 admittedly relatively unsophisticated people who could hear experts who could reduce their findings to understandable terms, they're the best criterion.
Terrific. Now, Doctor, believe me, this is very helpful. Here's what I have to ask you about the difference between enduring and transitory. All of us, everybody, comes across people who are mentally ill, who are psychotic, right? I mean, we all do sometime in our life suddenly meet somebody, maybe for 5 minutes, maybe a lot of times, who is really suffering from a mental illness.
They're likely in every street and block in every community.
Lawyers, as you know, are appointed as guardian ad litems.
Yes, sir.
And that is to make sure that they go out and talk to someone who is being held somewhere to see whether or not that person is being held properly or improperly and a report back to the court. That happens, doesn't it?
Yes. Competency.
Sir?
Competency issues.
Well, sure, but people who under, competency, not criminal competency,
Right.
just competency.
Sure.
And lawyers are lay people because they've had, or most of us, have not had any training in your discipline or psychiatric discipline. It is clear, and you know from your own experience, that you can have a discussion with a person for a period of time and suddenly say something to that person that triggers their schizophrenia. True?
Absolutely.
Or their paranoia.
That too.
In other words, you could have a 25-minute discussion with somebody who had been in Vietnam and talk to that person about sports and history and how the world is going and everything is fine, and then suddenly you say to them, did you ever travel to the Far East? And that person can go like right out, right?
I could further illustrate that if you wish.
Sure, please do.
It's true, but
Yeah.
I can think of one or two cases I have seen. One man being incarcerated in where I think Dr. Wallstrom worked, the Illinois State Psychiatric Institute, where I was conducting board exams, who was given to a colleague of mine for a board examination, who sat with my colleague for about half an hour and didn't say a word. It's called mutism. And he went out, the colleague, very upset because he could not get his work done or establish a record. So he went back to the staff psychiatrist who had picked out the patient and said, "You should not have given me a patient who doesn't talk." And he says, "Ask him about the zodiac." And he went back in the room with the evidently mute patient and said, "Tell me about the zodiac," and just a flood of words and speech began. There are other illustrations of that where individuals will confine evidence of psychotic process to even a very narrow area of their life. I think that illustration is maybe sufficient.
Thank you. It's been reported that lawyers will say something to people who they feel are just fine and ask a trigger question, and suddenly the psychosis comes out. That happens.
Yes.
Now, you have never, ever run across anything as horrific as this situation as a psychologist, have you?
Only in reading newspaper accounts, but never myself. Sure. Correct.
Jeffrey Dahmer, in your report, you use the word lust and control.
Yes.
It's your belief that his mindset was to achieve lust and control, right?
Did I believe that that was?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's correct.
There's a lot of people in the world who have terrible lust problems, correct?
Yes.
And there's a lot of people in the world, and we read about them in sexual harassment cases, who control the object of their lust in such a way that they're able, because of what they do and how they do it, to achieve their objective by controlling a person, either by force, money, status, position, to get them to succumb to their lust desires, right?
That is correct.
Sure. That's just a bad person, normally, correct?
Most of us wouldn't like that kind of person.
That's right. So therefore, when you talk about the lust and control of Jeffrey Dahmer, what was the object of his lust?
As I understood it, it was well-developed young men who were conventionally handsome or attractive to Mr. Dahmer.
And what did his lust desire? I mean, let me just say this. Let's say that the man who I've described in the power play, maybe his lust is just to have the person with them hanging around with them and has no desire to have sex with them. Jeffrey Dahmer, and that still would be an object of lust, but Jeffrey Dahmer's lust certainly went farther than to just have contact with people like that. He wanted to do something with them, right?
Yes, sir.
And in order to do that, he decided in his mindset to control them, right?
Yes.
And over the pattern of his years in this control, he started doing different things, did he not?
Yes.
And there was a break in his pattern under his lust and control because a couple of times his object was not a live person. In one instance, if you believe him, it was a mannequin. In another instance, it was a potential corpse that had already passed on and was buried, if you believe that. That was a part of his lust.
Among other things, yes.
Sure. And of course, even then, there would have been control, because he would have controlled the place where it took place and what he did when he was doing the fulfillment of his lust, correct?
Correct.
But we see changes in Jeffrey Dahmer on his desire for the effect of his lust, because now he starts drugging people, right?
Correct.
So the object of his mindset is lust and control, and he does that. But that isn't enough. He does more, right?
Yes.
He now, in this, whatever his disordered thinking character process is, the enduring part of it is to get the person back into his apartment to provide the fulfillment of his lust which is, in your professional opinion, what? What is the purpose of the lust when he starts taking these poor men back to his apartment?
Well, as a result of careful and methodical planning, he can accomplish the fulfillment of both motives, both lust and control.
You did not make a finding that he was a necrophilia.
Oh, beers in the chats, guys, or coffees. I'm going to throw some beers. I'm going to throw a like a drink, and a couple of J's to back it up here for Jennifer coming through here and becoming a new member, everybody. Boom, welcome her in. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Hold on. I'm going to crack you one open. I know it's early, but still, and I like to get those satisfying pours in. Everyone knows that. You can't really see them. Bam, let me raise that up. I'm going to do it one more time.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Boom. Welcome to the party. Thank you so much. Seriously, appreciate it.
The original report, I did not include that as even a paramount feature.
Nor did Dr. Palermo until he added it orally yesterday.
Yes, sir.
There's nothing. I just hope it's understood that I have the greatest respect for you, Dr. Friedman.
Thank you.
Why?
I have the greatest respect for you, Dr. Friedman. Why did they give you a degree? I'm not really sure why they let you graduate, sir.
After, well, first of all, did you ever have treated, do you treat, I mean, I was so impressed with your teaching mode here. Do you also treat?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever have a necrophiliac before?
I searched my memory, and I do recall one individual who was a mortuary attendant who was accused, never admitted to me, and therefore was inconclusive, but this is an extremely rare disorder, and he would be the only one who approximated it.
The other fella that I trust was a fella, the other fella that he never admitted that he really had this anyway, so you couldn't make the conclusion. If he told you, listen, I really want to do this, then you would have said, well, you're clearly a necrophiliac, right?
Yeah, there should be, by definition, some evidence that that disorder was present.
Did you, as you sit here now, believe, based upon all of the admissions that he has made to all the various professionals and all the various police, that if someone were to ask you hypothesis on the basis of all of those facts, without ever having seen him, would you say, this man, in my hypothetical professional opinion, would be a necrophiliac?
Sitting here today, I would say he has features of that disorder.
Okay. Now, without trying to bore anyone with definitions, the paraphilic definition is that a person has a constant preoccupational. Let me read it. Better than I do that. Well, can you tell me the definition of paraphilia, please?
Well, it's love or affection for an unusual object.
The book. Do you like the book or don't you like the book?
I use it on occasion, but not too frequently, actually.
This book says that the essential feature of sexual disorders is a recurrent, intense sexual urge and sexually arousing fantasies, generally involving either non-human objects, the suffering or humiliation of oneself or one's partner, not merely simulated, or children or other non-consenting persons. The diagnosis is made only if the person has acted on these urges or is markedly distressed by them. In other classifications, these disorders are referred to as sexual deviations. The term paraphilia is preferable because it correctly emphasizes the deviation, para, lies in that to which the person is attracted, the philia. Did Jeffrey Dahmer have, in your professional opinion, recurrent, intense sexual urges and sexually arousing fantasies to have contact with dead bodies, corpses, and was he markedly distressed by them?
The most honest response I can give you is that I was aware of some activity and preoccupation with dead bodies as a result of the interviews I had, the materials given me. I gathered the utmost respect for Dr. Becker, who clearly works in this specialty area, and was impressed by her telling the jury that he had sexual contact after death with all his victims. I tend to doubt that because as a psychologist, I'm always skeptical of what people tell me, because what people tell me has a large self-serving element. But she proved to be an excellent historian and probably interviewer, and I would say if even half of the victims, or some proportion, doesn't have to be half, show the preoccupation that Mr. Boyle has described, I would be willing to say that he had distinct necrophilic or paraphilic features, although it requires a stretch for me because it's a sexual deviation. I was brought up with the term sexual deviation.
Sure. But you
Good morning, Cammie. Thank you for coming in here. And again, no, you got knighted on Feral Friday. You are now a mod, but also, again, happy birthday once again. Boom. Thank you again for coming in here for so early. Appreciate it.
see, whatever the terms we call them, if they rise psychologically or psychiatrically to an impairment of the mind, then it doesn't matter what we call them, correct?
In terms of the legal necessity, I think, to formulate.
Right.
Okay.
So, you know, if I have a fetish for mushrooms, and all day long,
Go on.
all I do is go about the business of picking mushrooms, taking mushrooms, thinking of mushrooms, cooking mushrooms, and I don't go to work, or I only work enough so that I can continue to go out and pick mushrooms, and I drive my car all over town looking for mushroom patches, and I'm not taking care of my wife and children because I'm so preoccupied with mushrooms. And then it's showing that the reason is that mushrooms get me so sexually excited, and I gotta have them with me. Somebody might
I keep them things on me. You know what I'm saying? I got a pocket full of shrooms right now, bro. Shit.
say,
Boyle rolling up to the party. You know when Boyle's coming up with a pocket full of shrooms, everybody looking out, all right? Hide your wives, hide your sisters.
there's something wrong with that guy, right?
You would need a very understanding family.
And I better not.
He's getting tickled. Lisa Marie coming through here, $7.99, passing the plate. Thank you, Steve from Murder Church. No, thank you for being here. Seriously, every single person. Lisa, thank you so much for adding to the collection plate here. Let me hit you with a little. Really appreciate that. Boom, love that. But yeah, everybody here, thank you all so much. And everybody, I see a lot of people coming in late here. Hit that like. Hit the like, hit the thumb. Really helps us out here at Publicly Buzzed. Gets us in the algorithm. Share this out to your community. Share this out on Twitter. Share this out on Facebook. Go and repost the Twitter post that I made about this morning. Really appreciate it. And then, yeah, if you're not subbed up, do so. Do so. And to hit the three little dots on the side, make sure all notifications are turned on. Dropped a new video last night with Bob going over the new alibi stuff from Brian Koberger. Expect another video of that because YouTube totally fucked me last night. I made a 13-minute video of that clip from the stream on Feral Friday, and it only uploaded 6 minutes, so I wasn't even paying attention to the time frame. Has that ever happened to you, Jay? Like you've uploaded it and it didn't do the entire video? I've had it happen twice. The last time was a long time ago, so I wasn't paying attention to the times. I was like, here we go. I made a dank-ass thumbnail. I don't know if anybody fucking seen that. But, yeah. I mean, it's fine. It's still a really good clip, and it's doing well. It's a good video, and Bob's just killing it and doing a really good job explaining stuff on there, per usual. But, man, it really frustrated me. But I think I'm going to do a part 2 of that. So keep your eye out for that video. And if you haven't seen the new video, go give it a like. Go watch it. Go check it out, especially if you're in the Idaho 4 or Brian Koberger case that's going on. But yeah, everyone here, thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Don't blow me away.
Not get poisoned either, right?
Okay, right.
Question is, that can be an impairment. If I am so overset by something that I can't function otherwise in a normal fashion, one might say that I have an impairment of the mind no matter what you call it.
Probably so, although if you existed in an environment that allowed you to do those things, you might argue that the impairment would be minimized.
Yeah, Boyle's just downright giggling up here.
Now, I want to ask you a question. If all of us have never known anyone who had necrophilia, and none of us have ever known anyone who slaughtered 15 people in the manner and form in which Mr. Dahmer did, and if none of us have ever met a person who had such intense sexual desires, and if none of us have ever known someone who got sexual arousal from this conduct on a recurrent basis over and over again with a preoccupation, then certainly reasonable minds may differ as to whether or not that person's condition was a mental impairment, correct?
Objection. That's a hypothetical.
We got an objection.
Sustained.
And it was sustained right as Jennifer S. comes through. Distressed? No, he took showers with dead people and their body parts and went to work with a human with a head in a bag. Distressed? I think not. Jennifer, thank you for being here. You're in the right place.
Doctor, is it not safe to say, just as you told us before about Dr. A saying psychosis, mental illness, not mental disease, Dr. B coming to exactly the same conclusion, saying psychosis, mental illness, mental disease, that reasonable psychiatrists and reasonable psychologists looking at exactly the same set of facts can arrive at different conclusions?
May I expound on that a bit? And,
please.
I hope I'm not out of line, but I have a concern which helps me address your question. That is with regard to the concept of paraphilia, as I now understand it somewhat better as a result of hearing previous witnesses, and a concern for other aspects of my professional life that have me deal with similar disorders, whether they're called mental or behavioral or what have you. One specifically is called post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'll try to explain that a little bit, but back to paraphilia. My understanding of the literature, which is not the most sophisticated or intensive in the world, but I do read and I'm familiar with DSM-3R. And I was very impressed with Dr. Becker's testimony. I'm impressed with the conceited notion that not very many paraphilics are considered to be psychotic. Most of them exist in terms of the old-fashioned character disorder, personality disorder, sexual deviance. But I detected in the literature that I know and in the testimony of the defense witnesses a tendency to want to decriminalize behaviors that traditionally, in my understanding of the legal process, do not exculpate. That, you know, if you have a character disorder, a sexual deviation, you are responsible because you have, you heard the term choice, you have free will.
Yeah, where is Dan, huh? Everybody should go and flood Dan's Twitter asking where the hell's he at. Where the hell are you, Dan? What are you doing? Enjoying a nice Sunday morning snooze? Post his link right here. Go tell Dan exactly what the hell you think about him not being in murder church.
Son of a bitch!
Telling you.
Dan's a fantastic man.
To say that a paraphilic meets the test of insanity is to decriminalize a whole bunch of people, just as post-traumatic stress disorders are now used to exculpate various crimes. And I understand there is case information that there are 2 Vietnam veterans who were found not guilty because of insanity due to a post-traumatic stress disorder.
There he is.
That's decriminalizing
There he is.
behavior that, by my experience and understanding, is still governed by free choice. And, so I guess a summary is that I am fearful of a tendency which I see now in the latter days of my career for both psychologists and psychiatrists to grab onto a whole bunch of disorders and say this is somehow determined by society's experience. There's a recent one which has been in the Milwaukee News, which you may have read, that kids that go around
Daisy,
killing people or shooting people for their coats. Or
hell, we were up at 1:30 chatting, so I mean,
victims of post-traumatic stress.
you want to hear how
disorder.
crazy he is? He told me last night after Feral Friday, he didn't go to sleep till 11 in the morning on Saturday.
Because they've been brought up in a impoverished environment and they're affected by discrimination and poverty and hence must be found not guilty. If anything is crazy in life, that's crazy because it reduces the NGI process to a shambles.
Now, let's get back to talking about the policy statement you just made. You don't think for one moment that it is being suggested before this jury in this court that all people who suffer the disorder of paraphilia, necrophilia, not otherwise specified, are being claimed to be mentally diseased under the ALI test. You're not suggesting for one moment that that posture is being taken in any questions that I've asked.
No, I was using the term psychotic, and I think there's evidence people said that just a very few are psychotic.
That's right. So what we're talking about, and there isn't any person in the world that's going to take issue with your policy statement. No one can rightfully take issue with what you said. But each and every case, as a professional, has to be dealt with on an individual basis, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it is on each and every individual case that a jury decides whether or not counsel has proved to them, to their satisfaction by the appropriate burden of proof, as to whether this man's mental business rose to the level of mental disease, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. And you also know, and it was asked, and I believe by me, that it is rarely where paraphilic behavior ever rises to the level of mental disease as testified to by the experts I called. You heard that?
Yes.
Okay. So we're talking not about the general policies, which I'll stipulate to. We're talking about a specific case with specific things happening in a specific case. Correct?
Yes.
Now, assume that you as a professional found that rarity of a person suffering from a paraphilic disorder, and assume...
Rocking the hell out of that mullet, though, Mandy. Look at that thing. Like, you can see, like, that there's some work put into that. Look at the brush strokes up the front. Look at the way that thing kind of smooths out. You got a little bit of a wave on the side. Then up top, you'd be like, oh, that may be a little bit chaotic. Maybe she just has a little bedhead. Maybe she just rolled out of bed. No, that's on purpose. It's pooped up right at the top. So you can get that nice long flow out the back, baby. Dude, that's a Trailer Park Barbie right there.
that you made and came to the conclusion that that person's paraphilic order rose to the level that it impaired that person's mind, that it was enduring in nature, and that it substantially affected that person's mental processes at the time he did something, you wouldn't have any problem at all of postulating that in a court of law based upon your analysis.
Think highly of themselves, don't they?
That's correct.
Okay. So that you're not taking issue with the fact that someone like you, Dr. Friedman, someone as qualified as you, would come to a conclusion or an opinion opposite you because you're fearful that if that was believed, it might be a tendency to blow up the decriminalization system, the American system of justice. You're not really concerned about that, are you?
I guess my concern would be that there could be developing a body of beliefs that would extend mental health professionals into believing that a greater preponderance of paraphilics have the mental disease that you specified.
But that would be up then to your discipline to make sure that's policed, so that didn't take place.
I hope so.
Yes, right. Let's talk about the example of the Vietnam veteran who 7 or 8 years after he leaves Vietnam, with all of the stressors that happened over there and all of the problems that many of these fine young men faced when they came back, suddenly is acting out, and he commits an offense, and a doctor like yourself, very, very experienced person, says, you know, there is a new thing now that has developed for these soldiers who have been in these kind of situations, and it's called post-traumatic shock syndrome. And when that poor fellow was doing what he was doing, he was at that time in a transitory state, acting on something that came back into his head, and he cannot be held responsible for that act because he was suffering at that time an impairment of the mind, although transitory, that affected his mental process. You wouldn't have any problem with that at all, would you?
So people graded you when you walked through the door. What is she doing? How much hairspray has she even got? All right. That's how that you drugged. That's how that you judged people back in the day. And I think it's coming back. The mullet's back, is it not? Everybody's getting mullets.
Or any kind of evidence that at that particular time he exhibited features of psychosis and would make the mental disease more tenable.
Sure. So, but so what you're not doing is you're not suggesting that your discipline doesn't change from time to time, just as all other disciplines change by learning things that were not known. I mean, that's how we grow in our disciplines, right?
Yes, sir.
And if your discipline, whether you agree with it or not, if your discipline as an entity starts saying women who have been battered time and time again by their husbands, who suddenly after a period of years say no more and act out, that they might really be suffering at the moment that they act out because of an impairment of their mind, which is transitory, but substantially affected their emotional or mental processes at the time they did that. You wouldn't have any problems with that,
Right.
would you?
Now, my major concern is the possible eroding of the concept of individual responsibility, I guess.
And we all agree with that. We don't want to make a hard and fast rule on any given case that people can go out and do things, but we have to look at each case individually. You agree with that?
I agree.
And therefore, the woman
agree
who's
with
being
that?
constantly beaten up
You agree with
by her
that?
husband who's coming home at 2 o'clock in the morning and whipping her, hitting her, and slapping her around, after a number of years says no more and acts out, that woman may very well have a defense that should be brought forth into a court of law.
Yes.
You don't have any problems with that at all, do
Not
you?
at all.
Of course not. Just want to go into
Morning,
it's
Missy.
inconceivable to me that you graduated from college in 1943. I mean, you look. How old are you, doctor?
Thank you. 69.
Oh. Somebody opined that you got your BA at 16. I said, well, I'll ask.
I come from a long-lived family.
Uh-oh, everybody, pass out them beers and drinks in the chat, please. Adam, stand by the jams, membering up. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Boom, I'm going to pass out a little bit of everything for you. Boom, really appreciate that. Hold on, let me get you some tunage as well. A little bit of this one right here.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Boom. Boom, satisfying pours in the new location. A little bit better to see. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Love it. And, while we're on the subject, anybody that does become a member here at Publicly Buzzed, once a month you get one stream that is 100% just for you guys. It'll be a regular stream. It's one of the streams that, it's either a Tuesday or Thursday per usual. That is 100%. See the chat lighting up. It's awesome. But yeah. And I need to get better, honestly, at getting a little bit more content, members only content. I need to look into, I just need to find the time to do it, but get something going in Discord, whether it's watching some British comedies or whatever, get together and have a members only type of hangout, like a private room. Thank you all for coming through here, and thank you for membering up, Adam. Really appreciate that. Anybody that's hanging out, I know that we've been having lots of new folk come through here all morning long. If you haven't yet, please hit that like. Sometimes, the reminder really helps folks out, and it really helps me out, getting this out into the algorithm. We're still going to be rolling here for another probably 2 hours, maybe a little bit more. As this right here, we got another 10 minutes with Dr. Friedman, and then we'll keep rolling on to the next, folks. So, yeah, thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Boom, that's what I like to see right there. Boom, Daisy dead knows.
When I looked at your opinion,
it really
I
is.
looked at Dr. Palermo's opinion, I think that he had, and I'm not suggesting that you, obviously the two of you didn't sit down and come up with the same thing. You arrived at the same conclusions, but I noticed that he brought in a couple of things that you didn't, and that, I think only one thing, and that was fetishistic. Was there features of fetishism?
Yes, I would say, if pressed, that could have been included.
Did you think that Mr. Dahmer was saving these things as trophies?
Yes.
You didn't believe that he had plans to kind of trophyize his trophies by putting them on this black table that he purchased? Are you aware of the fact he bought a black table?
Yes.
Do you know why he bought the black table?
To mount what I call trophies, which maybe is an oversimplified term,
Okay.
But as I said, it had artistic, creative, as he described it to me. It was household artistic furnishings.
Well, Mr. Dahmer has told, and of course everybody has to say, are you embellishing or not? Mr. Dahmer indicated that he was trying to make a shrine. Now, if he didn't make a shrine and all he did was mount all of his trophies on that black table that he bought, that certainly would be very, very bizarre behavior, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I mean, if I were to tell you that I know a deer hunter who went out and shot 10 deer and went and got a table in his apartment that was a cracker box apartment and bought a black table and lined up 10 deer heads on the black table, you might say, why don't you have the fella give me a call? Maybe I should talk to him, wouldn't you? Bizarre, right?
Bizarre, but it borders on the socially acceptable, as you as I
love you, Bobby. Seriously. Thank you so much.
You're
the best. Always hyping, too, man. Bobby Hansen fucking rules.
The Bambi heads are mounted. It's fairly gory, but more acceptable.
Let's take the analogy that the fetish is red shoes, women's shoes. And he goes out and buys, my friend goes out and buys a black table, and I walk into his apartment and I see a black table with 14 different kinds of red shoes, designs, and I ask him what he's doing with them, and he tells me that he likes women's red shoes, and I come to you and I say, this guy in his living room in his small apartment, you might say, maybe you should talk to somebody, wouldn't you?
Yes, sir.
Sure you would. Do you believe that Jeffrey Dahmer did or did not have homosexual relations when he was in the Army in Germany, as he had, by the way, did he talk to you about that?
Yes, we covered it, not intensively, but
I understand that.
It was an area of inquiry.
Do you believe he was telling you the truth?
always skeptical if pressed to a choice. I would say he was telling the truth.
Yeah. See, I guess I'm troubled how one can say, here's a fella who's arrested by the police department. Whole bunch of evidence comes out of his apartment. And the first thing he does, if he has any intelligence, and I think you said he was highly intelligent,
Yes.
he tells the police about murders that they didn't even know about. And the police accept that. And as we sit here today, and I don't think it can be quarreled, there are about 4 murders that could never have been solved. Absolutely unsolvable, because without his statement, no one would get the lead. They would not be solvable. I mean, there isn't even parts. It's a hypothetical.
Well, I don't think it's being phrased in that form, Mr. Boyle.
Okay, let me
If you want
redo
to
it.
say that hypothetical,
Sure.
let's...
Assume that Jeffrey Dahmer told the police about 4 murders that were absolutely unsolvable for the reasons that the body parts weren't there to make the connection, and they had no knowledge of his involvement with these people. Make that assumption. And further assume that he says the reason I killed them was because they were ugly. Just make that assumption. Can you tell us what part of that assumption would you accept as true, and what part would you have questions about?
Sustained.
It really is, Sarah.
What do
He's just out here all day.
You use to determine when somebody is telling the truth and lying when they are talking to you about matters where they are confessing or making statements against their penal interests?
Well, a number of things. I mean, one would be contextual. It should fit in with other knowledge of events. Another would be the what there might be for the individual to gain by telling an untruth. Generally, the expression is heard, which I believe in people lie because they're afraid to tell the truth. And in the event of or in the case of the possible homosexual experiences in Germany, it may be far-fetched, but perhaps he wishes to keep his military record clean, having been impressed by military discipline, and he doesn't want his discharge to be sullied. Is the only thing I could think of, but as I said, I am inclined to accept his statement.
Okay, let's I understand. Assume that a person is a paraphilic, necrophilic, not otherwise specified. Assume that that person's object, and accepting the definition that I read as to what a paraphilic is, okay?
Yes.
And assume that that person's object is to have sexual intimacy with a dead object. And further assume that that person goes out to a graveyard and digs up a coffin and removes the corpse. And further assume that that person comes back to their apartment and has sex with the corpse. And further assume that that person does that on 15 occasions. And further assume that you, as a professional, believe in your professional psychiatric opinion that that person is having an impairment of his mind, that it has risen to the level of a psychosis. Would you be unable to make that decision that this is a psychosis merely because he chooses to go to a different cemetery each time, he drives his car, he waits until the middle of the night, he brings the tools to accomplish that, He then does such a good job of reseeding and resodding the gravesite that no one could catch the fact that somebody had tampered with the grave, would you be unable to make a diagnosis of psychosis? And I'm saying you assume there's a psychosis simply because he did all of the things necessary to accomplish that goal.
I'm not sure I understand. Let me review. Assuming that the individual who does the grave robbing is psychotic.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Make him psychotic.
Psychotic, then.
But he does all of these other things. In other words, he gets up in the morning, he puts on his clothes, he gets in his car, he takes his tools, he goes out, he digs them up, he resods, he takes it back, and he does the object of it. Is the fact that he was able to do all of these things, make all of these choices about what kind of instruments he's going to have, what time of the night he's going to go there, how he's going to go to different grave sites, how he's going to reseed it so he isn't caught, do those factors, assuming he's psychotic, prevent you from ever making the finding that he's psychotic because he's able to do things to effectuate the result?
I'm going to check and ask Beaver sidebar.
Sidebar?
Yep. Just a minute. How much longer are we going to be with?
Not much longer with this. I don't think. I just want to look through the doctor's notes and just a couple of things that he put in. I just want to know why they were in it.
Very well. I'll hear your argument in chambers.
Ellen, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Boom. Oh, shit. No. Okay. Yeah, I lied. We have a part 3 of Dr. Samuel Friedman, which is 47 minutes. So we'll go straight into that before we end with Dr. Samuel Friedman, which, damn, because he's boring as fuck. Yeah, thank you all for coming through here. Really appreciate it this morning. Again, Murder Church on the air. Chat has been booming. Likes have been pouring in. Thank you all so much. We're going to go right into this video, and I'm going to give you all a little bit of the old Murder Church stinger here real quick. Also, please make sure you're following all the socials, Twitter especially. I get wild on Twitter. The community here on YouTube also posting every single day. Make sure you're following Jay. Make sure you're following Defense Diaries, Mr. Bob Mata. Boom. Symbol like Voltron up in this mother. Here is a stinger. Murder Church, whoa, you get a little concert on Murder Church. Hit that thing. I'm going to see a man about probably nothing real quick as we roll right into part 3 of Dr. Friedman.
Son of a bitch!
I'm going to withdraw my last question and try and rephrase it. Dr. Friedman, I have read, the jury has heard time and time again, the definition of what a paraphilic is. Okay?
Yes.
Just on the question of paraphilia, assume that the object of the paraphilia is necrophilia.
Yes.
Is it the fact that that person makes choices to achieve the object of his paraphilia in any way dispositive?
Anyway,
dispositive. I mean, does it end the matter? In other words, his choices are to do A, B, C, and D to achieve the object of his paraphilia, which is necrophilia.
bring it to a conclusion here. So. Okay.
Do you understand where I'm at so far?
I think so.
The fact that he makes choices to achieve that object mean that there is no circumstance under which his necrophilia, his paraphilia, could ever be considered an impairment of the mind.
I'm going to go into the smoke. Be right back. Follow the smoke.
I guess I would consider paraphilias, including necrophilias, impairments of the mind by definition. And in my own construct, think of it as a sexual deviation, which is an impairment of the mind, but also allowing the person to make choices at all points.
The word choice means voluntary, correct?
Yes.
A person suffering from a severe psychosis, such as schizophrenia, likewise makes choices, do they not?
One can construe choices transcending mental state. You know,
Sure.
we all make choices independent of severity of problems.
The schizophrenic whose delusions or hallucinations direct them to a certain goal, and they go towards that goal, would be making choices such as how to get to the place to achieve the goal by driving a car, taking a bus, flying an airplane. True?
Yes.
So that schizophrenic who's disabled by their schizophrenic, whose delusion is to go into the middle of a forest and look for a treasure, and they're sick mentally because of their schizophrenia, decides in that state of mind that they're going to drive a car, and they're going to read a map, and they're going to drive towards the place, and they're going to go into the woods in spite of the fact it's 25 below zero, are making choices, correct?
Yes.
It does not diminish the fact of their mental illness, does it?
That's correct.
You indicated that Jeffrey Dahmer needed treatment.
Yes.
You indicated in your written report, and I'm not sure if you read every word in the written report. I know that you read a lot more than that, yeah. But you indicated that at one time he was seen to be dangerous by a professional.
Yes.
And that he was not treated.
That's correct.
Did the treatment that you would encompass as a expert in the field of psychology include taking of antipsychotic medication? Let me rephrase it then. Did the treatment that you considered encompass taking medication?
No.
Is it your belief that Jeffrey Dahmer, on the day after his 10th murder, had the ability to say, "No more, I will not kill again," without treatment?
Objection. Immaterial.
Okay, let me have the question.
Question. Is it your belief that Jeffrey Dahmer, on the day after his 10th murder, had the ability to say, "No more, I will not kill again," without treatment?
Question with that, I'm sorry.
No, sustained.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty whether or not Jeffrey Dahmer would have continued to kill, his killing, to effectuate the object of his disorder as you have described it without treatment?
Yes.
And what is your opinion?
That he would have continued in that manner.
Okay. You made just a couple of statements that I'd like to highlight out of your report to ask if I understood them correct. Mr. Dahmer had been exhaustively interviewed, and I'm talking about you and others, for the past 2 to 3 years, and may well have adopted a perfunctory, almost robot-like manner of responding to interview questions. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Was that because of you referring to the demeanor and how he conducted himself in your presence?
It was my observation as I was interviewing him, yes.
You said at the interviews he made a repeated point of his wish to express contrition by informing the victims' families of the events leading to various deaths. He states that his future is bleak indeed, and he has given serious thoughts to suicide. Had you told us that already, Tim?
That's correct.
Okay. You said in your report that his explanation of his criminal behavior concerns his need to maintain control, and you underline that, over his victims in order to achieve maximum and perhaps lasting satisfaction.
Yes, sir.
What's lasting satisfaction?
Enduring would be a synonym, but over a substantial period of time.
But it was not lasting satisfaction by having the victim become a part of him.
Well, it would be of evident benefit that it would have a more enduring if it became part of him.
Did you believe that he involved in cannibalism, or did you think he made that up?
No, I believe that.
You believe he did?
Yes.
Did you believe that he had, you were in court for the testimony of Dr. Becker? Oh, by the way, there was some question asked to Dr. Becker about the fact that she called him Jeffrey and whether that was any meaning that she developed some kind of a rapport relationship with him and became more of an adversary because of that. All day yesterday in your testimony, you called him Jeffrey also.
I wasn't aware of it. It's likely true.
Yeah. It has absolutely no meaning, right? That the fact that you call him Jeffrey means nothing other than the fact that that's how you're reporting the matter, and maybe because of your age and his youth, that's an appropriate way to refer to him.
That would be correct.
And your opinion, obviously, because you were here for Dr. Becker, is completely different than Dr. Becker's. Well, not completely different.
No, in truth, I felt she was an unusually compassionate person, but it is not extraordinary that an older professional psychologist calls a younger person by first name.
And frankly, you're a compassionate person.
I hope so.
Sure. And did you at some time in your life say, I better not, I can now start calling people by their first name when I testify? You never made that conscious decision, did you?
No, it seemed to evolve gradually with the years.
Okay. You said that the timing of the numerous deaths, according to Mr. Dahmer, prompted by the emergence of uncontrolled feelings of lust. Is that what he told you?
Yes.
Did you believe him when he told you that?
Yes.
Okay. You said the profiles of his tests 89, 91, and 92, and that's the MMPI that you educated us on, are uniformly characteristic of a severe personality disorder in which elements of depression, impulsivity, and poor anger control are evident. The profiles are associated with poor therapy diagnosis and warrant concern regarding antisocial, if not dangerous, tendencies.
Yes.
Okay, now, trying to follow your graph, you really said, as I understood it, that the MMPI hasn't really gotten itself where there's one graph that shows sexual or paraphilic disorders. They're within the old ones. When this thing was developed, there had not been the split off of the two concepts, right?
The original diagnoses did not include paraphilia, but...
No, I'm talking about the test, though.
Yeah, no, the test had a scale for psychopathic deviant, which was intended to include sexual deviants. And
he was high on that?
Yes.
How high?
I think in the 80s, which is 3 standard deviations above normal. That's very high.
And that would concern you as a psychologist?
Yes.
Then you told us that there was some other line that shows the concept of whether or not the person is showing some schizophrenia.
Yes.
And now the schizophrenia we're talking about is the same as the schizophrenia they use when they're talking about psychosis?
Yes.
And you said that the schizophrenia that he was showing when you tested him was higher than it was in the earlier tests.
That's correct.
And the earlier test you were talking about, I believe I heard you, was the one that was taken in '89.
Yes, and I had access to one taken in 86.
86.
also.
So we see an elevation in the line about schizophrenia from 86 to 90, late 91, 92 when you did this.
Yes.
And you said that a lot of times people who are sitting in jail cells tend to show that that line goes up because of that environment.
Yes.
But by the same token, how high, first of all, how high was that schizophrenia line in 86?
I don't recall. I'm not sure. I may have the record here, but I'd have to look.
Would it take you long to find it?
I could search and
Let-
let you know in 3-4 minutes.
Okay, I'd like you to do that, but see if I can't maybe short circuit it. It was much lower than the one you saw in 91.
My memory is it was substantially lower. That's correct.
How high was it in 91?
That's December of 91 as opposed to January of 92. There were two, and they were approximately the same.
Okay, how high were they?
Be about 80 is my recollection. I could let you know in 10 seconds.
Sure.
I'm sorry, a faulty memory. It was up at 102.
What does that mean?
That's very, very high. That's 4 standard deviations above the mean. It would be a fraction of 1% of all the people taking the test.
If I took that test and I showed up that high, might you conclude that I had schizophrenia?
No.
What would you conclude then when it said it?
As what I said, you have a personality disorder. But if I may...
See, I need you to explain the connection between
okay.
schizophrenia and personality disorder.
It indicates to me the greater likelihood of an emergence of an underlying psychotic process which may be there.
So what you're saying is that if I'm on a low scale, you're not worried about finding out whether or not I'm on the road to psychosis. But if it's high, you might be a little concerned that I might be on the road to psychosis.
Right, particularly in a incarcerated environment.
Okay, I want to ask you that. If a person such as yourself would say that while not disagreeing with you on your belief that people who are in an incarcerated situation might show a high level, that might also be indicative of a substantial change in his personality from 86 to 91 and early 92 when the test was administered.
That would be possible.
And we know in Jeffrey Dahmer that between 86 and 91, 92, when he took your two tests almost back to back, that he had killed 16 human beings. Correct?
Yes.
Did you take that into account, that maybe when he was answering those questions in 91, 92, when you gave him those two tests within a few weeks, that his schizophrenic line was going up that high because of the reasons of him knowing that he had killed all of these people and not necessarily simply because he was sitting in a jail cell when he took it? Did you consider that?
Yes, it was my opinion. It was not put in my report that his adjustment level was deteriorating over the period of time you specify.
From 86 to 91?
Yes.
It's clear, is it not, that one could conclude, as you have, to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty, that the reason that Jeffrey Dahmer's schizophrenic line was rising at that level, causing that professional to consider psychosis, was because, in fact, he was going towards a psychosis rather than the personality disorder, in addition to the personality disorder.
Yeah, he continued to have a severe personality disorder, but the emergence of an underlying schizophrenic process became more and more likely during that time period.
Sure. What I'm trying to say is that You're not saying absolutely that the reason it was that high was because he was in jail. It may have been other, one could conclude there might be other reasons it was that high.
Right. The most immediate reason was my knowledge and his description of the jail circumstances, but also could have been contributed to by his deteriorating adjustment.
I think I'm about finished. Let me just go around the horn.
Sure.
Thank you, Doctor.
Cross-examination by the state.
Thank you. Dr. Friedman, first on that last issue, you indicated that you were satisfied that there was some deterioration in Mr. Dahmer?
It's a hypothesis, but I think it's borne out.
Okay. And so that you saw him on January 4th, 1992, correct?
That was the last time professionally,
And that was when you administered the MMPI,
for the second time.
which showed the, when was your first MMPI again?
I believe it was December 19th.
Okay. So these December and January MMPIs where Mr. Boyle has talked about the schizophrenic indication, even looking at those,
I should do that, Mandy, because I'm the worst at remembering names.
you concluded, did you not, that in December and January of December of 1991 and January of 1992, that Mr. Dahmer was not schizophrenic, correct?
That's correct.
Was not psychotic, correct?
Correct.
And if his condition wasn't deteriorating, and from the other materials you've looked at, it's fair to assume, is it not, that prior to that time, he was even less on the road to schizophrenia or psychosis than he was when you saw him, correct?
Yes, my memory of the 1986 MMPI protocol is that it was substantially less severe.
All right. Now let's go to another issue. Mr. Boyle referred back to your use of the word Jeffrey, and indeed you did call him Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Correct? Did you ever read a 26-page document that has the word Mr. Dahmer only in it to this jury and change it virtually every time to Jeffrey?
I'm not aware.
As Dr. Becker admitted doing?
I wasn't aware of that.
Okay. Did you see Dr. Becker's testimony?
I saw a substantial portion of it, not all.
Did you see substantial portions when she was reading her notes to the jury?
Some.
And were you aware she was using the name Jeffrey?
That was brought to my attention by the examination of her. I had not been previously aware. I had not, well, actually, I read her brief report. I'm not even clear as to what she called him.
Not her 26 pages
Right.
of notes.
Right.
All right. Assume, based on the previous testimony, that a person has a 26-page document that they read and the words Mr. Dahmer are changed continuously in the reading, not just in conversation, in the reading. They're changed from Mr. Dahmer to Jeffrey when they go from what's looked at to what's said. Is that an interesting psychological process to you?
It's of some interest.
Is there something called countertransference?
It is rumored that it abounds in the world, but it's sometimes known by other names.
Such as?
What would be compassion, empathy, things of that sort.
All of which are very good traits.
If used wisely, they are even valuable traits.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to a couple of other things. Mr. Boyle used a couple of examples. about if you needed to, would you want to see a person, I think he indicated, who indicated that at his house he had a table and he had a fetish for red shoes. And he went out and he bought 500 pairs of red shoes and set up this altar to red
Yes.
shoes, and whether or not you'd want to see him. I think your indication was yes, you would, correct?
Would be an unusual behavioral manifestation.
Would stealing 500 pairs of red shoes, would he be excused for that because he wanted red shoes?
I think only in the Philippine Islands, perhaps.
Mr. Boyle also talked about, I think he used himself as an example, an intense fascination with mushrooms. And
That was a hypothetical. I don't really know. I'm not into mushrooms.
Boyle, you love mushrooms. Don't be backing away from it now. We all heard you. You got real giggly. You love some mushrooms. All mushrooms. What is Boyle doing right now? Tripping balls.
however, we'll relieve Mr. Boyle of it, but let's assume, going back to his hypothetical, about someone having, he said going out all day into the woods and picking mushrooms, and that's all he's doing, and that he made it a paraphilia, correct?
I think he was trying to use a possible example of one.
All right, now a paraphilia is basically sexual desire, intense sexual desire, but it's for an unusual, forbidden, or taboo object, correct?
That's correct.
But the sexual desire is something, as far as we know, all human beings feel, correct?
To greater or less degree, it's a universal.
It's the object of that desire that makes it a paraphilia, correct?
Yes, it's culturally defined.
Now, going back to the person with the paraphilic fascination for mushrooms, assume that this person has a paraphilic fascination for mushrooms and goes into the woods one day and sees a little girl who's picking mushrooms, and she's got a basket full of them, and hating killing, he's got a flask of alcohol with him. He takes a drink because he knows he's going to kill that little girl to get the mushrooms. Is he responsible for his conduct?
Objection to the form of the question. It doesn't contain enough facts to be able to warrant the doctor without a better foundation to answer the question.
Let me have it read back.
Question. Now going back to the person with the paraphilic fascination for mushrooms. Assume that the person has a paraphilic fascination for mushrooms and goes into the woods.
I don't need any more. Sustained.
Shut it. Shut it down. I got it from here.
Alcohol
Pleased with himself.
reduces
Look at him.
inhibitions, correct?
That's true.
And the ability to conform one's conduct to the requirements of law is a characteristic that's soluble in alcohol, isn't it?
Yes, by tradition, it is not a mitigator.
Another point, you indicated that you had spent time in the military, and I believe you also, as a psychologist, worked with the military?
I work with the Peace Corps.
Mr. Dahmer, through the reports that you have probably read, indicated on a number of occasions that what he did so that he could kill his victims was keep them as objects. He didn't want to get to know them. Is that a very common psychological phenomenon in order to reduce the normal human inhibition to killing?
I'm having difficulty with that. Would you mind repeating it?
Okay, maybe I can simplify it.
Okay.
Mr. Dahmer indicated on a number of occasions, you may have read this in his reports, that one of the things he did was view his victims, intentionally view his victims as objects, so that it would be easier to kill them. Is that a common psychological phenomenon in the military and such that enables people to kill those that they intend to by dehumanizing them?
Excuse me, with all due respect, are we talking about during combat? Because we are going to object to the form of the question. That'd be a better foundation than that.
I don't know.
What? Let me rephrase it then. Is dehumanizing does intentionally dehumanizing or objectifying another person make it easier to kill that person?
It is my understanding that it is a frequent military form of indoctrination with troops going overseas into combat, that is done. I'm not sure how frequently, but it does happen.
And using that psychological technique on yourself also makes it easier for you in a homicide situation not to conform your conduct to the requirements of law, correct?
Makes it easier to kill.
And killing is a lack of conformity with the requirements
Yes.
of law, correct? But that does not mean that you lack the ability to conform your conduct to the requirements of law, does it?
That's correct.
Right, now, Mr. Boyle, in starting to question you, went to your conclusions, which were that there were no substance to an NGI plea. At the time of the offenses, Mr. Dahmer was fully able to appreciate right from wrong and to conform his conduct to the dictates of law. Those were your findings, correct?
That's correct.
And those are to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty, correct?
That's correct.
Now, I believe in Mr. Boyle's first formulation of questions, it sounded like you found no mental disease and therefore found that he was able to appreciate right from wrong and to conform his conduct to the requirements of law. Did you make two separate findings? One, that he had no mental disease. Did you make that finding?
Yes.
Separate and distinct from that finding, did you also find that he was fully able to appreciate right from wrong and conform his conduct to the requirements of law?
Yeah, I so found.
Oh shit, it's happened. 47 viewers, 47 likes. Bam, I love it when that happens. Just wanted to call that out. Thank you.
Not someone, were to define Mr. Dahmer's fascination with dead bodies as a mental disease or defect. From the evidence you viewed of what he did, do you have any, would that change in your, strike that, do you have any doubt that he was able, during the period of time of the homicides, to conform his conduct to the requirements of law?
Before you answer that, Doctor, I object to the form of the question because it elicits in the question the absence and/or presence, either way, of a finding of mental disease. Since this doctor did not find a mental disease, it's inappropriate for the second question to be answered, we must first find the first answer.
Your Honor.
Boyle's pissed.
This is very important.
Boyle's
factor,
pissed.
Your Honor. The court well knows how the question is posed. Since this doctor did not find the answer to the first question, the second question cannot be answered by him.
However, he's already testified he made two separate and distinct findings. One, whether or not there was a mental disease, and two, whether or not he could conform his conduct to the requirements.
Judge is done. He's like, this is it. I am turning this, to take this from Jay, I'm turning this thing around. This courtroom's going back to the house. He's fucking done. Look at his eyes. Look at his face. Look at him. Out. He's done.
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
Son of a bitch!
Of law.
And once he says no to the first, he can't be asked his opinion on the second.
He's an expert witness. Those are the two issues in this case.
I haven't asked for argument, but no. First of all, Mr. Boyle, I understand the basis of your objection because I recall the testimony that he gave under your cross-examination. However, I think that should be left in the province of the jury, so I will allow the state to ask that question. The objection is overruled.
Boyle pissed.
Did you, based on your review, your testing of Mr. Dahmer, your review of the information concerning Mr. Dahmer, and your conversations with Mr. Dahmer, make a determination as to whether or not he could conform his conduct to the requirements of law and not kill on each of the 15 charged homicides?
Yes, I made that determination.
And what was that determination?
That he was so able to conform his conduct.
And also that he knew right from wrong?
Yes.
And that finding was to a reasonable degree of psychological
That sounds good,
certainty.
Daisy.
That's correct.
I love a KFC bowl.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Boyle.
I'm troubled. You made a finding,
Need to ring the bell
first
again.
off, that he was not mentally diseased, right?
I think we're dealing with semantics. You know, I said he had a disorder that happens to be listed in DSM-3.
You made a decision that he is suffering from a personality disorder not otherwise specified.
But I had hoped to indicate that by virtue of giving legal testimony, I had to translate my terminology into legal terms. Then I think we got into difficulty.
Well, but you see, I'm left with this question, because the definition, and I don't make these things up, says that a person is not responsible if they are suffering from a mental disease, and as a result of that mental disease, they lack substantial capacity to conform their conduct to requirements of law. Now, you know that definition.
Yes.
You, in the process of doing what you were asked to do, whether you like it or not, have to help us answer those questions, and that's what you've testified to. And you said, my finding was that he was suffering from a personality disorder not otherwise specified.
Yes.
I ask you, is that a mental disease under that definition?
For purposes of testimony here, the answer is yes.
So he was suffering from a mental disease.
Yes.
As a result of that mental disease, it's your testimony he did not lack substantial capacity to conform his conduct to requirements of law.
That's correct.
Fine. Good. Now, you're not suggesting, are you, that the United States military, you were in the military?
Yes.
As a soldier?
Yes.
I was in for 6 years. Do you saying that they teach people to dehumanize the enemy so it makes it easier for them to kill them?
Yes. Not necessarily using those constructs, but to make it easier to kill by characterizing them in a manner that could be considered they become more objects than usual.
What branch were you in?
Well, I was in military intelligence, but I'm also a consultant to the VA, and in the last several years, I've talked to large numbers of Vietnam War veterans.
I understand, but did you go through the infantry, artillery, armor school?
No, quartermaster.
Okay. Would Jeffrey Dahmer, in your professional opinion, committed these same 15 crimes had he not had a drink of alcohol in his entire life?
Would you repeat that?
Sure. Let me rephrase it. Counsel brought up the question of alcohol. Would Jeffrey Dahmer have committed these same offenses if on the instance of each and every one of these
Dr. Samuel Friedman.
homicides he did not have anything to drink?
The offenses in general, and it's hard to pick one from the other.
He's
would
probably
have
still
been
alive. No, that's different.
less likely should he not have had alcohol.
My question is, in your professional psychological opinion, to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty, would these crimes not have happened if Jeffrey Dahmer had not been drinking alcohol?
Okay, so I think he was 90 in 2012. So who can do the math there? Real quick. Samuel Friedman was 90, I believe, in 2012. I'm putting that together because I'm looking at an article from December 23rd, 2012, and it says Friedman died December 16th at his home, and he was 90. So if he's 90 in 2012, what would he have been 20 years prior to that? He'd have been 70. So he's either 69 or 70 here. I think I just did it myself. Bam.
The best answer is that they would be less likely to have occurred, but may indeed have occurred.
28.
Now, my red shoes and mushroom examples didn't go over very well.
I'm telling you, Boyle loves mushrooms. At any moment in this trial, he's like, no, and actually just today, he's like, I'm bringing them up. Bringing them up. I think they're relevant.
But they played, I hope, a portion in asking you
There we go,
whether
Maxie.
or not a person's
I did math in my head. That's
paraphilic
very unusual.
disorder can drive them to do things that appear to be bizarre. And the answer to that is yes, correct?
That's correct.
I must say that I am, the last thing in the world I'm going to suggest is because you call him Jeffrey that it meant anything, but you do realize in your written report, simply because they're talking about reference to how many times Dr. Becker did it, you referred to him as Mr. Dahmer 17 times, and you called him Jeffrey every time you talked about him yesterday. That has no meaning whatsoever, correct? The fact that your written report said Mr. Dahmer and you talked to him, you said Jeffrey. It has no meaning, does it?
It's an interesting stylistic difference. I'm not sure I know what it means.
One thing that I did not ask you, and I asked leave of the court, I had a note up the top of the page, but I missed it. It was a subject matter I should have brought up in my first cross, and I would like to ask. It's just going to take a second.
Let's find out if, why don't you ask your question and find out if there's an objection?
Did you talk?
Okay.
Fair.
Okay.
We're going. They're taking off the gloves.
Did you talk to Tracy Edwards?
Did I talk to Tracy? No.
Okay. You know that Tracy Edwards, you know who he is.
Yes.
And you know you saw him. I mean, he was the last one to see Mr. Dahmer. Did you feel it would not be important, not necessary, or did you feel sufficiently knowledgeable about where you were that one way or the other he wouldn't have made any difference?
With regard to Tracy Edwards?
Talking to him about what he saw going on in that apartment.
I would have liked to have talked to him. I didn't.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. They go way too in depth on this.
Just very briefly, going back to the
He's showing the guy respect,
alcohol
and he
issue.
explained why.
Did you review Mr. Dahmer's 176-page statement to the police?
Very briefly, yes.
You aware that this statement, which is already before the jury, was in there? He stated that when he killed these individuals, he was always drunk, and the drinking helped him to get into the frame of mind and made it easier for him. He indicated that he didn't drink every day, but when he planned to get someone, he would start drinking after he planned, and then he was usually drunk when he killed them. He related that he even drank when he was cutting up the bodies. He again stated that it helped to make it easier when he was doing this. He related that he feels that he is not an alcoholic, and the reason he was drinking was due to the fact that he committed these terrible offenses. Were you aware of that indication from Mr. Dahmer?
Yes, I remember that.
And is that one of the reasons that you indicated that had he not voluntarily gotten himself drunk,
It's coming. We got 7 minutes left.
kill, it would be somewhat less likely that these people would be dead?
Yes.
Because he would have been even more able to control his conduct.
Oh, yes. That's awesome to hear,
And
Austin.
My follow-up
Shirts
question
incoming
that I didn't get to last
for people
time,
that have
Mr. Boyle.
ordered them. I'm excited to get mine. Fuck yeah.
Mr. Boyle asked you whether or not you had an opinion as to whether or not Jeffrey Dahmer would have killed again had, after this last offense, had he essentially not been caught, if he would have killed again, and you indicated yes.
Yes.
Does that in any way affect your opinion that he was able to control his conduct and not kill at the times he did it?
No, it wouldn't alter my opinion.
Nothing further.
Nothing.
Doctor, you may step down. Thank you. In view of the closeness to the noon hour, I think we'll break for lunch at this time. However, since we're getting out of here a little before 12, I would suggest that we return at 1:15. And today, I'm really saying 1:15 for the benefit of the people who...
We were here at 1:15.
I don't... Okay?
Yes, sir.
Court's in recess.
All right, please.
Okay, my understanding is we have a couple of legal matters to take care of before we can bring the jury back out. Is that correct?
That is true, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Mr. McCann.
It is my understanding now that the two doctors have been called, and for purposes of the record, I would move that the court grant summary judgment to the state on this record to the effect that the defendant is in fact sane, has failed to meet any burden of proof requisite to do that. I would further summon the court's attention, particularly to Dr. Friedman's testimony, although it was also raised by Dr. Palermo, that what is now being referred to as the sexual disorders was in fact simply a subsection of the personality disorders in the DSM-1. Dr. Palermo adverted to that. Then Dr. Friedman, in his statement on personal responsibility, pointed out his concern, while expressing respect for several of his colleagues that appeared, said he was gravely concerned that what had been traditionally held, persons traditionally held responsible for it, in other words, acting out of the sexual deviations, that he was distressed that what was happening now was that it was being argued that they ought not be held responsible for it. And it seems to me this is precisely what our state Supreme Court has warned against, and that is defalking in the legal responsibility to letting the medical profession, by manipulation of the DSM-3R, dictate what will be a mental disease in the state of Wisconsin for purposes of the American Law Institute defense. I think we actually have both Palermo and Friedman adverting to that. What Palermo said was expressly that, yes, it used to be under DSM-1, it was a personality, it was a subsection of the personality disorder, sex deviant, and then we had Friedman continuing saying, yes, in the past, these people have been held responsible for this, and that he was troubled that now he's seeing an argument, and he didn't do this in any derogatory remark of his colleagues, but he expressed his reservations that what had been, for what people had in the past been held responsible for, now we're going to be under the aegis of a change in DSM-3R, we're going to be, attempts would be made to hold them not responsible. And that's precisely what's happening here. Under the aegis of a change in DSM and the DSM-3R, the defense is marching under the flag of a newly created mental illness. translating into a mental disease within the ALI definition. And I would urge the court, as a matter of law, now is the time to scotch such perfidious abuse of the law with this, and I would urge the court to non-suit on this particular issue and to grant summary judgment to the state on the issue of sanity.
Okay, the court's ruling would be that this motion is not appropriate at this time.
Well, you know, Judge,
No, wait a minute, Mr. Boyle. This is... I guess what you're really asking for is equal time to make a speech.
I'm highly offended.
The jury is not present at this time. It seems to me that whatever the situation is at the end of the defendant presenting his case, that's the situation. The court's heard the motion and denied the motion, and I think this is significant. Now, I understand Mr. McCann wanting to preserve his record, and therefore the motion is there. So the court's ruling two ways. One is that it's not an appropriate motion at this time.
Good.
The other is, even if it were an appropriate motion, the court would deny it.
I guess the problem that I have is it looks like we're the bad guys pursuing our legal remedy while he's trying to tell everybody that we're trying to play games in the courtroom, and that offends me, and I object to him making a motion when he knows the motion's inappropriate. It can't be made. You've already ruled that we're going forward. It's going to be a jury question, and unless you take it away from the jury at the close of all the testimony, he has no business making motions like that, and I object to him doing it.
Okay. Wait, look, okay, so horse apiece right now. You've each had a chance to make a speech. Let's go on. I understand there's another legal issue to deal with.
I'm advised, we have subpoenaed a Dr. Carol Olson. I'm advised that he's here represented by an attorney who wishes to argue a motion to the court.
Very well.
Mr. O'Mara of my office will respond.
If it will save everybody a lot of time, we're going to waive any claim of attorney-client privilege and let this good doctor testify.
I think it's physician-patient.
I think.
Physician-patient.
Physician-patient. What'd I say?
You said attorney-client.
Well, I get a little confused sometimes. Physician-patient. Mr. Dahmer was told about this. I had my colleague, Ms. Ryan, Ms. Patricus, go back and explain it to him. I asked him if that's what he wanted to do, and he said he did. Mr. Dahmer, you waive on the record the ability of Dr. Olson to testify concerning matters that he knows about that are germane to this case. With your approval, and you understand that you could stop him from testifying. If you chose not to waive the privilege, you'll waive the privilege.
Yes, I waive. Does that solve the problem?
Yes, it does, Your Honor.
Okay. Then I think at this point we're ready for the jury. Is that correct, counsel?
Ready?
We ready for the jury?
I was rolling too, is what's stupid. I came back from probably nothing. See, that's why I don't hit the button. That's why I've got to let the knocking go. Son of a bitch. Okay. Thank you all for being here at Murder Church. We're going to roll right into, hold on. I was explaining all of this. Dr. Olson, another doctor who treated Jeffrey Dahmer. Thank you all again for your patience here. And then it's going to go into Ronald Flowers Jr., a man who escaped from Jeffrey Dahmer. So this is a 47-minute clip. We're going to get 2 people on it. The second one's Ronald Flowers. I don't think is actually going to appear on camera. I previewed it a little bit last night. It seems the camera is continuously just on the attorneys. Yeah, we're going to roll into that. I just hit the stinger, so we're going right into the video. And we'll keep rolling right here on Murder Church. Thank you all so much again for hanging out. Appreciate it. Hit that like, baby. And thank you all for having patience.
Nothing but the truth, so help you.
I can't hit the button. I can't hit the button. You got to hear the knocking.
And then would you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Dr. Carol R. Olson, O-L-S-O-N.
Dr. Olson, how are you employed?
I'm a primary care physician located in the West Dallas area.
And you're licensed to practice medicine in the state of Wisconsin?
Yes, I am.
By virtue of that license,
all right,
permitted to
we're good. Hats straight.
Drugs to people when they complain of illnesses to you?
Yes.
As part of that practice of medicine, did you ever treat anyone known to you as Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yes.
Is he seated in the courtroom now?
We'll stipulate to identify.
Ooh.
Very well.
During the course of your treatment of Mr. Dahmer, did he ever inform you that he had problems sleeping?
Yes, he did.
I even called out Cindy from Italy. Cindy, I called you out during my mute rant also.
And did he state he had problems sleeping because he worked third shift?
That's what he told me.
And would this be on or about July 31st, 1986?
That's correct.
And did you believe him?
Son of a bitch!
As a result of his complaint, did you prescribe hypnotics or sleeping pills, which is what we're calling? We're not going to name the actual drug.
Yes, I did prescribe for him.
And did you continue to treat Mr. Dahmer up through April 12th of 1990?
Yes, I did.
During the course of that treatment, did Mr. Dahmer continue to complain of having difficulties sleeping?
Yes, he did.
And because he complained of that, did you continue to prescribe the same drug?
Yes, I prescribed the same drug.
Based on the number of prescriptions with the allowable refills over those 4 years, would it be possible for Jeffrey Dahmer to have refilled that prescription?
I mean, I imagine this guy loves George Jones. Gets the fuck down to some George Jones. Loves a good smoke. His liquor drink is never empty.
Many as 17 times.
Jack on the rocks.
Yes, that's possible.
Probably enjoys a course.
No further questions.
100% mowed his lawn drunk as piss.
Cross-examination, Mr. Boyle.
Dr. Olson, if I came to you as a patient
there you go.
And described for you the same things that Mr. Dahmer described to you over the same period of time that he was describing him to you, you would have given me the same prescription, correct?
Yes, I would.
That's all. Thanks, Doc.
Redirect.
Just one question. At the end of your treatment of Mr. Dahmer, you actually expressed concern that he was taking this drug so frequently that he might become addicted to it. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
He is
George
Jones.
He switched doctors, correct?
I did not see him after that. I would have to assume that that's what happened.
Definitely wears penny loafers.
I have no question. You may step down, Doctor. Thank you.
Judge, you asked us to alert you to a particular witness. That would
Okay, we're going to take a brief recess, after which we'll hear from our next witness. Jury may retire to the jury room, please. Raise your right hand. Solemnly swear all testimony you're about to give is true.
So yeah, that was quick with the doctor there. Didn't have much for him. He didn't get just absolutely attacked and raked through the mud, taken out back, beaten with a stick. It was pretty easy on him. But now we're going to get, let me get the name. I don't want to fuck up the name from somebody that actually escaped. Again, it says Ronald Flowers Jr., a man who escaped Dahmer. So I don't think that they appear on camera, so we'll see what's up.
Please be seated. And then, sir, would you tell us your name and spell your last name, please?
My name is Ronald Douglas Flowers Jr. Last name spelled Flowers.
Just pull the mic towards you a little bit, Mr. Flowers. Thank you. Mr. Flowers, how are you presently employed?
I'm a counselor at Lake County Division of Mental Health.
And how long have you been employed with the Lake County Division of Mental Health?
Well, this is my second time working there again in the same position, and I started the beginning of April of this year to the present, and I was employed, and then I took an absence for about a year, and I worked there for a year before that.
And you received your undergraduate education at UW Eau Claire, UW Stout, and also did journalism work at Houston Tillotson College in Austin, Texas, correct?
That is correct.
And is it fair to say that you've been working primarily with mentally ill and developmentally disabled folks since 1985?
Yes, it is.
In the course of that job, are you given the opportunity to observe the signs and symptoms of mental illness and developmental disabilities?
Yes, I have.
And during the course of your employment, have you also had in-service training in recognizing those signs and symptoms and working with the mentally ill?
Yes, many of them.
I'd like to draw your attention to April of 1988, if I may. At that time, how were you employed?
At that time, I worked at a different agency in Zion called the Lake County Society for Human Development. I worked in the vocational development department with a team of other people. My primary responsibilities were case management and skill training for people with developmental disabilities and mental illnesses, placing them in work situations in the community.
When you're talking Zion, Illinois?
That is correct.
And Lake County is in Illinois, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'd like to draw your attention specifically to April 2nd of 1988. Do you recall that day?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall having any plans for that evening?
Yeah, initially I was going to purchase a waterbed from a friend of mine. Excuse me.
And go ahead, I'm sorry to interrupt.
But when I went to pick the waterbed up, she hadn't finished draining it. And I had talked to some friends of mine earlier who were making plans to come up to Milwaukee with them, so I just decided to wait until later to pick the bed up and join them in Milwaukee.
Okay. How did you intend to pay for that waterbed?
Well, she wanted $200 for it, so I had the $200 in my wallet, and I also brought some extra money because I was hoping maybe she would be interested in. She was in the process of moving, and she was selling a lot of things, and I just took extra money just in case she had something else.
Approximately how much in cash did you have on you that evening?
That I don't know. It was probably between 250 and I know it was at least 250 and probably more. I'm not sure how much extra I took, but
When you found out you couldn't get your waterbed, you decided you were going to go join your friends?
Yeah, if we wanted to go all together, but since I was going to get the waterbed, I couldn't. And then I just decided that since I knew that where they were going to be, I would just meet them there.
Okay. Where were your friends going to be at?
219 2nd Street.
Okay. And what's located at 219 2nd Street?
There's a nightclub called Club 219.
And is that in Milwaukee?
Yes, it is.
And is that primarily a gay club?
Yes, it is.
Approximately what time did you get to the Club 219 that evening?
Not real sure. I know it was late because the parking lot was pretty filled at the time, so I imagine it was 11:30 around that time.
Okay. And did you meet your friends there?
Yes, I did.
What are their names?
Bonnie, Carol, and Matt.
And did you have any difficulty locating them when you got to the bar?
No, they were right straight in the back. They're in a group talking, so it was pretty easy to find them.
Okay. Were you drinking that evening?
No, I was not.
Why not?
Because I needed to go in the morning and pick the waterbed up, set it up, and get back to Wisconsin. I had planned on attending an Easter dinner at my grandmother's house, so I wanted to get all the things that I had to do done before I had to go to dinner.
So were you living in Wisconsin at this time?
No, I was not.
You were living in Illinois in Lake County?
Yes, I was.
Well, what did you do at the bar if you weren't drinking?
Oh, actually, my friends and I are kind of like a close-knit group. We all lived in the same vicinity in Illinois, within a mile of each other, and we were always together, so we were engaged in pretty intense conversation, kidding each other and that kind of thing.
But how late did you stay at the bar that night?
Probably pretty close to around closing. I know that people had started to leave when we left, so it must have been around 2, a little before 2 maybe.
At any time did you see Jeff Dahmer in the Club 219 that evening?
No, I did not.
After the bar closed, what next occurred?
Well, I walked, there's a parking lot located across the street, and we all walked out together. And their car was in the front of the parking lot, and we all said goodbye at my friend Matt's car, and he left. And they all left, and I went back to my car and tried to start it.
Okay. You say they left. Does that mean you saw them drive off?
Yes.
Okay. And you went to your car, and you said before your car was parked some distance away because you got there late. Is that correct? Okay, what kind of car were you driving?
It was a 78 Oldsmobile Regency.
And when you tried to start your car, what happened?
Well, I had been having a problem with my choke, so I imagine that was what the problem was, and it wouldn't start. And after I kept trying it and kept trying it, the battery just died.
Pardon me. What did you do next?
Well, then I went to the phone booth, which is located on the corner of 2nd Street and Pittsburgh, I believe it is. There's a little phone booth there. And I started making telephone calls to my friends to see if I can get one of them to come and give me a jump.
Okay. How far is that phone booth located from the Club 219?
It's on the same side of the street, about a half a block down.
And were you able to contact any of your friends to give you a ride home?
No, probably because it was still early, and most of them were either still out or there were sometimes people go to breakfast and that kind of thing after. So I just kept calling and kept calling and kept calling.
How many calls?
Uh-oh, CR going to come through with $20. Damn, CR, thank you so much. You are awesome with the super sticker. Thank you. Really appreciate that, CR. Going to give you a little love here. Hold on. Boom. Always coming through. CR every single week. Man, also a super old school Publicly Buzzed G is what she is. Amazing. I'm going to give you a little more. Hold on. Boom. How about a little bit of boom?
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
And then a little bit of boom. Thank you, CR. Seriously, appreciate that. Every murder church coming through. Yeah, everybody has got a break here for a moment. Again, is the mic working? Holy shit, let me make sure. Yes. Lord, every time I go on any kind of I knew what happened that time. It was me hitting the button, but thank you so much. Everyone just randomly hanging out. Really appreciate it. Let's see, it's 11:55. How much more time we got in this video? This will probably be okay. We'll go through this one. We got about, 30 some minutes left of this video. And then, yeah, we'll call it another week. Week 11 will be in the books. But again, thank everyone for coming through here. Every week it gets a little bit more crowded. The chat gets a little bit more bumping. Yeah, I love it. Thank you all so much. Really, really appreciate it.
You think you made?
I don't know. A lot. I called some of the numbers more than once. I couldn't tell you.
As you were standing at this phone booth, was there anybody else waiting in line to use the phone?
Actually, yeah, there were probably 4 or 5 people standing behind me.
And when you weren't getting a hold of anyone, what did you do?
Oh, I was getting pretty irritated, and sometimes I would slam the phone down and pick it up and try again and mumble and grumble to myself because I was irritated.
And did you hear anything from the folks behind you waiting in line?
Not anything.
Okay, I mean, the birthday girl, I'm going to keep saying that probably for way too long. You're probably going to get annoyed by it as well. Also, newly knighted, adding to the collection plate with the $1.99. Thank you very much, Cammie. Appreciate that. Hit you with a little bit of Biggie real quick. Boom. ODB. Boom. I've been getting some new sound bites. New mission is to get some new sound bites that work with when super chats come through and members. I do have the newly anniversary ones for members once those pop through, which is going to be, which I always see them, and now that I've got the anniversary ones, I'm not seeing them, of course, but they'll be rolling back through, I'm sure. But yeah, always on the mission for new sound bites, and I need to keep a regular list because I'll just be randomly through the day thinking about them, and be like, oh, I need to do that, and then I'll be like, oh, I'll remember that, and then when I sit down at this desk, nope. Gone.
In particular, I could tell that they were getting a little antsy behind me, but I didn't hear anything.
Thank you, Kim, for being here. Appreciate it.
So what did
Seriously.
you finally do?
I decided to think about it and collect my thoughts, so I stepped to the side, and I was looking through my phone list again, trying to think of maybe someone else who I had forgotten about that could possibly help me.
Before making your phone calls, do you recall seeing Mr. Dahmer?
No, I do not.
Okay, when you were sitting there looking at your list, did you come in contact with the person you now know as Jeff Dahmer?
Yes, I did.
Is he seated in the courtroom now?
Yes, he is.
Could you identify him by where he's seated and what he's wearing?
They're the best group here, honestly. J-Buzz Nation, love it.
Can you tell me about that initial encounter with Mr. Dahmer?
Well, he basically approached and started talking. I really wasn't paying very much attention to him at the time because it was more like I was preoccupied with getting my car fixed and getting back home. So it was more like he just started talking, and it was more of an annoyance than anything.
Did you make any observations of him at that time?
At that time, no.
Okay. Did there come a time when you started talking to him?
Yeah, after he kept talking and he asked me what was wrong, and I told him that my car was broken down, and I was trying to find some friends of mine to help me get it going so I can get back home.
And what did Mr. Dahmer say in reply to that?
He said that he had come down to the bars and he thought that he was going to be drinking, so he didn't drive his car down. He took a taxi in case he would get too intoxicated to drive.
You say anything else?
I probably.
Okay. What happened next?
Well, then he he offered to give me a ride to go with him to get his car to bring it back to jump start my car, and that was about the first time that he really caught my attention. Mostly because it seemed as though he had the solution to the problem that I was trying to work on. So then I began to talk to him.
Okay. And what'd you say when you started talking to him?
Well, he asked a lot of questions. He told me initially that he had recently moved to Milwaukee from Ohio. He told me, asked me about if I was from Milwaukee. Of course, I told him that I wasn't, that I was from Racine and I lived in Illinois. And then he asked me what I had been doing that night, I believe. I told him that I was at the 219. He told me that he was at, he rattled off a whole bunch of bars, C'est La Vie, The Phoenix, La Cage, I believe.
Did he appear to understand what you were saying?
Yes.
Did he carry on an intelligent conversation?
Yes, he did.
At any time were his answers incoherent or unable for you to understand them?
No, they weren't.
Did you make any observations of him at this time?
Yeah, he asked me an awful lot of questions that I thought basically were small talk. He asked me about my job, and of course I explained to him in generic terms what I do. And then I have a habit of turning, when you ask me a question, I have a habit of turning the question back on you. So if you say, how are you, to me, I'll say, fine, thank you, how are you? So when he asked me about my job, I asked him about his job. He told me that he worked at a factory in downtown.
Shit, CR, coming through again, passing the plate this time. Before we go, thank you so much with the $5. Let me hit it for you. Let me hit it. Boom. Boom. Thank you so much, CR. Appreciate it again. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope you have a good week. Definitely kind of starting off the week here, I guess, technically being Sunday. Here with Murder Church. Started out right, in church. You're doing it the right way, CR. Austin Raines with the $4.99 right behind her, passing the plate with some mushrooms on it. Murder Church Commune. Holy shit. Wow. Everybody be careful with that one. That one is dangerous.
I'm telling you like
Holy crap,
it is,
Austin.
baby.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Boom. Yeah, Adam. Email me, publiclybuzzed@gmail.com. I will make you a shirt with your Frenchie on it. Sure. Let's go.
He did electrical.
Everybody needs a custom shirt. Email me.
Work of some kind. And then he asked me again about my job, if I liked it, and he told me that he admired people who did the kind of work that I do, and I must be a patient person, and that kind of question. He also asked me if I made a lot of money, which I thought was a pretty odd question, and I told him basically an answer like, I'm not starving, but I'm not getting rich either, basic generic answer.
Did you make any observations about Mr. Dahmer's manner or demeanor or how he carried himself at this time?
Yeah, he appeared as though he may have been drinking, but he wasn't extremely drunk. And the reason I say appear is a lot of times you'll see people who have been drinking, they'll have a wide stance to stable himself. He wasn't stumbling or anything like that. He didn't hold eye contact very long. He would look at my eyes, but then when my eyes would contact his, he would look away, which was
Communion.
Communion.
I'll fuck up a word every time, baby. Woo! We are a commune, and you need your communion. All right.
Do you have any reason for subjecting him to this kind of scrutiny at this time, looking at him that carefully?
Of course. He had offered to give me a ride home, and usually if you get in a car with someone who has been drinking, you probably want to scrutinize him pretty closely.
At this point, did you think he was intoxicated or not knowing what he was doing?
No, I thought that he had been drinking, but he was very in control of himself. He was in control of his speech, and he wasn't stumbling, so he appeared to be.
What occurred next?
Somewhere in the process, he told me that he had already called a taxi cab and that I could share the ride with him to his house. He said he lived on just west of here, west of where we were, as he described it. And then we would get his car and come back and give me a jump, and that'd be fine. Because of him volunteering, I guess you could say, to be a good Samaritan, I was pretty suspicious of his motives. So I made it perfectly clear that my intentions were to get my car and get home, and that was the extent of what was ever going to happen. I had no interest in sex, no interest in conversation, no interest in anything but getting my car and getting home.
And did he appear to understand that?
Yes. In fact, I asked him twice during that conversation, and he politely and calmly said, sure, no problem.
Did there come a time when the cab showed up?
Yes, it did.
And did both you get in the cab?
Yes.
And what did Mr. Dahmer tell the cab driver?
He told the cab driver, he asked him where to, and he said 55th and Lincoln.
About how long did that cab ride last?
5, 10, 15 minutes maybe, I'm not real sure.
And where were you dropped off, if you know?
Well, when we got around the vicinity, he told the cab driver to just make a left here. And the cab driver was saying, is it on the first house? Is it in the middle of the block? Is it on the end of the block? Is it on the right or left-hand side? And he didn't give him a specific answer. He just kept saying, a little further here, up here, up here. And then finally, when he got halfway down the block, he said, pull over here. And the cab driver pulled over to the right. And we got out of the cab, and he paid the cab driver.
Except for telling the cab driver what to do, did you have any conversation with Mr. Dahmer, or did he have any conversation in the cab at all?
Not to my knowledge, I don't remember any.
So it was basically a silent cab ride up to that point?
Yeah, that was one of the first times that I'd ridden in a cab, so I was pretty much taking in, looking at the meter and then how dirty it was and that kind of thing.
Excuse me, could you talk up just a little bit? Your voice is trailing off at the end. We're just missing the end there.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
You got out of the cab at the middle of a block. You're not exactly sure where. Is that correct?
Right.
What happened then?
Well, then I pointed to the house in front of us, and I said, is this the house? And he was like, no, it's down this way a little. And then I said, well, is it at the end of the block? And I'm trying to pin him down, too, so I know where I was going. And he said, no. He also explained that he had the cab drop us off a little ways away from the house because he didn't want to wake, he lived with his grandmother, and he didn't want to wake her up by the noise of the car.
Approximately how far did you walk to get to his grandmother's house?
I'd say a block and a half, because what he did was he went down the block and back around and halfway up the other block, walking.
At some time you arrived at the grandmother's house, right?
Correct.
What happened when you arrived there?
I said, I'll just wait for you here. He was going in to get his keys, I believe. And I said, I'll just wait for you here. And he said, no, why don't you just come on in? It'll just be a minute. So he opened the door with his key, punched in some alarm numbers on the alarm system, and then he went upstairs. And as he started to go upstairs, I heard a voice that sounded to be coming from an adjacent room that was on the same level, and the voice was an elderly woman's voice, and she said, is that you, Jeff?
And did Dahmer reply?
Yeah, he walked over to the doorway to where the sound was coming from, and he said, yeah, it's me, Grandma. I'm just going to make myself a cup of coffee.
Were you there at that time?
Yeah, and then I started saying, I don't have time for a cup of coffee. I really do have to go. I've got a lot of things to do in the morning. I have to go, and I just kept repeating myself.
Were you speaking fairly loudly at this time?
I wouldn't say fairly loud, but my voice does carry usually pretty well.
Did you believe the person in the next room would have heard you?
Yes, she would have.
What did Dahmer do then?
Well, then he's basically disregarded what I said, and he said, well, I'm kind of tired. I have to have a cup of coffee. And he walked over to the other part of the kitchen by where the coffee pot was and started to make coffee. And then I think he got a bottle from somewhere. I believe it was from a cabinet that was right overhead of Bailey's Irish Cream liqueur. And he offered me a drink. And I said, no, I really have to go. I really have to go. I don't have time. I don't have time.
Did you ever see him reach to go get the keys for a car or anything like that?
No. He was going to supposedly have a quick cup of coffee first.
What did you do at this point?
Well, I was standing right, I guess it would be behind him, facing him where the coffee pot was, and he had his back to me, pouring water and mixing coffee or something, I don't know. Excuse me.
And as he continued to make coffee, were you talking with him at all, or was he talking to you?
Yeah, but he was saying, he kept trying to convince me to have some Bailey's Irish Cream, and I was explaining to him that I wasn't going to drink because I had to get up early in the morning and I had a lot to do. And he asked me if I wanted a cup of coffee, and I initially said no, I have too much to do. And
how did he respond when you said no?
Well, he seemed to be a bit on the nervous side. He just kept pressing the issue. Well, it'll only be a quick one. It won't take very long. We'll hurry up. As soon as I have a cup of coffee, we'll leave. That type of thing.
Yeah, to the point right here with Charlotte, this has to be hard for him, and he could have been a victim. He could have just been another number in this case. And he's lucky enough to be one of the people that's here to be able to face the man that potentially tried to kill him. Yeah, crazy case. We've got about another 20 minutes here in this video. Again, thanks everyone for hanging out, being here. Really appreciate it. Again, trigger warning on all this stuff. We have a lot of fun here on Publicly Buzzed. At the end of the day, we in the true crime community deal with a lot of really dark content, and this is definitely one of the darkest things that we've ever covered here on Publicly Buzzed. Every single week, from the experts to the witnesses, the subject matter that's being talked about is a very extreme subject matter, and yeah, this has to be absolutely. And he was traumatized. But thanks y'all for hanging out, and again because again we have fun here, but again, watching something like this, at the end of the day, we still show respect where it needs to be implemented or shown up, I think.
What did you decide to do then?
Then I decided, well, a cup of coffee probably wouldn't hurt, and I would just drink it fast and be gone. And then we'd be able to leave.
Did he ask you what you took in your coffee?
Yes, he did.
What did you say?
Cream and sugar.
At any time when he was making the coffee, did he block the coffee cups with his body, separating your vision of the coffee cups from you?
Yes. He was doing it facing the cabinet, which was facing the wall, and his back was towards me.
Was he continuing to talk with you at this time?
No, not at all.
Did there come a time that he handed you the cup of coffee?
Yes, he did.
Do you remember anything about him at that point?
Yeah, he seemed to
Damn,
calm
Andy.
down a little bit. He wasn't.
Oh, Gypsy's barking. She heard me get loud. But shit, Care Bear dress getting ruined in barbed wire in Texas. No doubt, right? Or is that somewhere else? Or did you move to Texas later?
Talking, he wasn't, he didn't seem nervous, and he just looked at me.
What happened next that you recall?
The next thing I recall happening was thinking to myself, why is he looking at me like that? Because for the first time, his eye contact was solid. He didn't divert it at all. And it was almost as though he was waiting for something. I'm thinking to myself, what is he waiting for? So naturally, I started to drink the coffee quicker because I became uneasy to get out of there. And the next thing I remember was becoming extremely dizzy and my head starting to go down, and that's it.
Yeah, the way he said that, right? He just started looking at me different. How fucking creepy.
When you say and that's it, do you mean you passed out?
Yes.
What's your next memory?
Woke up in County General Hospital in Milwaukee.
County General Hospital here in Milwaukee?
Yes.
Had you suffered any injuries?
Yes,
Could you describe them, please?
I had an abrasion right about here that looked like a rug burn, a couple more on the side of my face.
I'd like the record to reflect he's indicating his right temple and right cheekbone.
And I had another abrasion about this size on my right hip. They all looked like carpet burns.
Okay. And when he said about this size, he was indicating diameter of approximately 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Oh, I apologize. Did you have any idea how you got to that hospital?
None.
Do you have any recollection of how you received those injuries?
None.
Were you missing any property?
Yeah, I was missing, I was missing all the cash from my wallet. And
Robbed him.
I was missing a bracelet that was on my right arm.
Took his cash.
And a herringbone chain that was around my neck.
Took my stash, dude. And the chain. What the fuck? Jeff?
If you know, did the hospital remove your clothing at any time?
No, they did not. I don't think they had a reason to.
When you next undressed, did you notice anything wrong with your clothing?
Yes.
What was that?
I noticed that my underwear were on inside out.
In addition to your underwear being on inside out, did you notice anything else that was different about your body when you undressed?
I noticed that I had some bruises on my neck, and there was a white hair on me.
Okay. And where was that white hair?
My pubic hair.
On your pubic hair. When you realized that your property had been taken, did you ever file a robbery complaint?
I filed a complaint, but the complaint was robbery, drugging, the whole 9 yards.
And where did you do that?
West Allis Police Department.
And to your knowledge, were charges ever brought?
No.
When did you file that report?
That evening sometime. It must have been between 10:30 and 11:30 that evening.
When you say that evening, do you mean the evening you got out of the hospital?
It was Easter Sunday evening.
Do you recall ever encountering Mr. Dahmer again?
Yes.
When did that occur?
It occurred at Club 219 again. One of the things I noticed about him.
When did that occur about? How long after this incident?
Probably a year. I really couldn't tell.
Probably a year.
It was quite some time. I'd looked for him after it, but was unable to find him.
Okay. How did you recognize him?
He had, when we were talking at the corner, I noticed he had some shoes that were ugly.
They were ugly shoes. Can you describe his ugly shoes for us?
They're like the old hush puppy type, the kind you used to wear when you were a kid. I never liked them, so that's basically how I remember them.
The ones with the thin laces and...
Yeah.
What color were they?
Tan.
Okay. Why are you bringing that up with regard to this case, how you recognized him the next time you saw him at the 219?
Because I was ready to, actually, my friend who I was with was ready to go.
Yeah, and it's looking a little bit back here. Mandy was asking, if he's still alive. I think he's still alive. I'd have to look a little bit deeper, but I did find something that this article is from 2022 and him talking, even while he was testifying here, he had been working as a counselor at Lake County Division of Mental Health in Illinois. And he had been working alongside individuals who had mental health illnesses and developmental disabilities since 1985, previously to this even. And he was trained in spotting signs of mental illness. When testifying in court, Ronald said if Dahmer's grandmother wasn't there, he would have died. Since talking in the documentary about Dahmer, Ronald has tried to live a normal life and stayed out of the spotlight. So I do believe he's still alive. But yeah, he knows if the grandma wasn't there that day, that he would have been another number. Like, he's super lucky.
And I was standing by the door trying to finish my cocktail before I left. And he was behind me saying, let's go, let's go, let's go. And when I looked down, I saw a pair of shoes like that. And at least I don't see that many kind of shoes. And it reminded me of the incident. And then when I looked up, he was standing right next to me.
Did you say anything to him?
Yeah, I said, you remember me?
And what did he say?
He said, no, I don't. My name is Jeff. And he extended his hand.
What happened then?
I said, I didn't shake his hand, and I basically went off. I started by saying, you know who the fuck I am, etc., so on and so forth.
You were angry?
Yes.
How did he reply?
Well, he kept his eyes on me, but he just insisted that he didn't know who I was, and he said something like, well, maybe we could, he said, I really don't remember who you are, but maybe we can go have a cup of coffee and talk about it or something like that, something to that. He did mention that go have a cup of coffee and talk about it, which made me even more irate.
Do you believe he remembered who you were?
No, I know he did.
No doubt in your mind that he knew who you were? What happened next?
He left and went outside, and my friends noticed a change in me, I guess you could say. And I was outside yelling and screaming and cussing and threatening to kill him and all kinds of things, and they wouldn't let me get near him.
What happened next?
I saw him talking to a black man who was maybe a quarter of the block down, and they were just standing there talking the whole time. I'm screaming and saying horrible things. And then a taxi cab pulled up, and they both walked to the taxi cab.
What did you do?
I started screaming, don't go with him, he's crazy, stay the fuck away from him. I was just belligerent, I guess.
What happened next?
Well, the black guy looked at him, he looked at me, he looked at him, he looked at him again, and then he just walked away.
And then what did Mr. Dahmer do?
He got in the taxi cab and left.
When you called him crazy, did you mean that he was developmentally disabled?
No.
Did you mean that you thought he was suffering from schizophrenia?
No.
Did you mean that you thought he had a psychosis?
No.
What did you mean by crazy?
He does weird things. It's the only way I could describe it.
Did you mean to suggest that he had a mental illness?
No, I did not.
In all the time you spent with Jeff Dahmer, counting that date in April of 1988 and time the year later, did you ever believe he was hearing voices?
No, there's no evidence of that.
Did you ever believe he was having hallucinations?
No, I did not.
Did you ever observe him going into a stupor?
What do you mean by a stupor?
Staring in almost like a trance-like state?
No.
Did you ever observe him having racing thoughts?
No.
What do you mean by racing thoughts?
What do I mean by racing thoughts? The thoughts, they don't come to your head coherently. Like you may have one thought that zooms in, and then another one that's completely not connected to that one come in, and then another one that's not connected to either one of them come in. It's like a rapid thought process where you think of a lot of different things that seem to be unrelated.
And you see that among the mentally ill people, correct?
Oh yeah, all the time.
But did you see that with Jeff Dahmer?
No, I did not.
Did he ever respond to questions in an irrational manner?
No, he did not.
Did he ever respond to questions in an incoherent manner?
No, he did not.
Did you ever think he was having something like a Shirley MacLaine former life experience?
No, I did not.
Based on your observations of Jeffrey Dahmer's conduct, actions, manner, expression, and conversations, and your training and experience, did you believe he was ever suffering from a mental illness?
No, I did not.
Based on your observations of Jeffrey Dahmer's conduct, actions, manner, expressions, and conversations, and your training and experience, did you believe he at any time had difficulty distinguishing right from wrong?
No, I did not.
Based on your observations of Jeffrey Dahmer's conduct, actions, manner, expressions, and conversations, and your training and experience, did you believe Jeffrey Dahmer had any mental illness that would impair his ability substantially to conform his conduct to the requirements of law?
I noticed nothing that would clue me off that he was suffering from a mental illness at all.
Could you speak up? I'm sorry.
I've noticed nothing that would clue me off that there's a possibility that he could be suffering from a mental illness, the ones that I know of at least, at all. Nothing.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Flowers, as far as your training is concerned in the medical field, you're not a medical doctor, are you?
No, I am not.
Okay. Could you tell me just a little bit further as to what exactly your medical training consists of?
Medical training?
That's correct.
I do not have medical training.
Psychological training?
My training is through in-services, through the health department, developmental facilities and the sort.
Okay. What does that mean? What do you do?
What do I do? Well, we have some training recognizing signs and symptoms of various mental illnesses, how to treat mental illnesses, behaviors that are associated with mental illness.
You don't actually do the treating, though, do you?
Pardon me?
You don't actually do the treating, though, do you? That has to be done through a licensed doctor, does it
Yes,
not?
that is correct.
Okay. Going back to the night that you were talking about here, relative to the time that you had gone over to Dahmer's grandmother's house, when you had gone in, you had persistently said that you wanted to leave because you were in a hurry, correct?
Correct.
Was there ever a time that you became adamant in the fact that you just wanted to leave?
Yeah, but that would have been quite difficult since I didn't have transportation.
Okay, you never asked to use the telephone to call for a taxi?
No, because he was going to finish his cup of coffee and we were going to leave. I didn't feel it was necessary.
Okay. So it wasn't holding you up all that much to have that cup of coffee?
No, it wasn't, but I wanted to be on my way home by then.
Okay, and at that point in time, you've indicated you really didn't see anything strange about the fact that he wanted you to have a cup of coffee with him?
No, I did not. It was late at night. A lot of people have coffee late at night.
Okay. You'd indicated that you heard the grandmother talking to Jeff, is that correct?
I heard an elderly woman, yes.
Okay. Was there ever a time that you came to learn that the grandmother came into the room, or interrupted Jeffrey in any way?
Was there a time that...
That you ever came to learn that the grandmother ever entered the room? Did you ever see her?
No, I did not.
Okay. And you don't know whether or not there was ever a time throughout the course of the evening that she would have come in and interrupted anything that may have taken place after you were unconscious?
I was unconscious, so I really couldn't.
Okay. I'm just saying you never came to learn that later.
No.
Okay. You indicated that you had called the police the night that you were released from the hospital, is that correct?
No, I went to the police station.
You went to the police station, and this was in West Dallas?
Yes.
Okay. And that was the night of Easter?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and that was the very next day after this occurrence had taken place that night before?
That is correct.
And when you went to the police station, did you ever come to learn why they never issued any charges against Mr. Dahmer?
Objection. Sustained.
When you had gone in and reported this to the police, did you indicate Mr. Dahmer's name?
Not per se. I told them that I knew his name was Jeff or Jim or something like that.
Did you report to them where you had seen him or met him that evening?
Yes, I did.
Did you also report the house that you were at?
I took them to the house.
You did take them. A year later, you had said approximately it was that you saw Jeffrey again in the 219 Club, is that correct?
That is correct.
Could you narrow it down as to time for us a little bit better at all? Was it about that same time a year later, or was it a little closer in time?
I really couldn't tell you.
Okay, that's fine. You had indicated, I believe, on direct that you, at one point in time, looked for him.
People are still watching. I think chat broke is what happened, and I can't send any messages out either. No one got banned or anything or timed out. I think chat just broke per usual with shitty fucking YouTube. Stream elements is going to come through though, promoting the Twitter.
During the course of this year.
Let's see if I can say something. There it is.
That is true.
Okay.
Lord.
Where did you go to look for him? How was it that you went about this?
I just basically went to bars and looked for him.
Could I ask what you're planning on doing if you would have found him?
Sustained.
We'll work it backwards. You'll see the relevancy, Your Honor, in one moment. That you indicated there came a time that you did, in fact, run into Mr. Dahmer, correct?
Yes.
And that was again at the 219?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, you've indicated that you became irate and you were talking to him after you had talked to him because you basically thought that he was kind of a crazy man, correct?
No, basically, I became.
Oh shit, Jamie calling it out. Yeah, I don't actually have anything today. I got to stick to the water, Jamie. I would have to actually buy something. Yesterday I was at a family reunion and I had a drink yesterday, but yeah, my fridge is empty, even from the booze, even from the Crown per usual. Water for it.
Way because I was upset with what.
Thanks for calling that out, though.
Okay, I understand that.
Chat's the worst.
But at the time that you were having a conversation with him, were you there with any other friends?
Yes, I was.
Did you at any time direct any of your friends to call the police?
Why would I call the police?
You've now found him.
Pardon me?
You've now found him.
I found him before.
You had found him again another time between that year's time?
No, I took them immediately after I got out of the hospital. I took them to the house where I had been.
So the police had interviewed him at that time?
I believe they had.
Okay. Could you tell me, please, I just want to, just for clarification here, get down the date of the instance that you were with Mr. Dahmer at the grandmother's house?
It was the Saturday before Easter Sunday, whatever
And that
date
was? Is that 1988?
Yes.
Is that April 2nd? Or-
I'm not sure. April 2nd. If it's the Saturday before
Prior to
Easter Sunday,
Easter
whatever
in
date
88.
that is.
Okay. No further questions.
Can you read that direct?
Just to clear up the date, it could be April 3rd, it could be April 4th, you're not sure.
It was the Saturday before Easter Sunday.
Okay. I have nothing further.
If that's important, if we know the year, if we get the proper documents, the court could take judicial notice of when Easter fell on that particular, in that particular year. So.
No further questions, Judge.
Okay. Great. You may step down, sir. The court's going to take a recess.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on week 11. Number 30. And there is a lot. So, yeah, next week we will go into, it's just called John Doe. We're not even getting a name. And Michael Salinas will be on the stand. So, yeah, we're going to continue into week 12, if you can believe it or not. Guys, thank you all so much. You guys made another Murder Church absolutely amazing. The chat was booming the entire time. Austin, Mandy, Jay, Stevie, thank you for coming through here. Daisy, Kathy, Nombre, Missy, everybody I'm seeing in the chat right now. Nelly, Kathy, thank you everybody. Everybody just lurking, hanging out, and putting me on as you do your day on Sunday. Thank you so much. That helps me out so much here at Publicly Buzzed. And I really fucking appreciate it. Everybody that come through and donated. You guys are fucking amazing. I'm getting ready today to start putting the studio back together. I got a desk that we're going to be working on today, literally after this. Me and my fiance, once I get that together, I'll have a little bit more of an idea of where I'm going with it. I got my Publicly Buzzed live neon sign from Jay's brother. Stoked to get that going. So yeah, we're getting closer and closer to having the studio back. I want to get some better lighting, get some, just the whole thing. I want it to pop. So as we get closer, I'm freaking excited. So again, thank you all. Please hit that like as you head out the door. I will see you guys again Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern time. You guys will probably see Jay in the morning. So head over to Jay. I don't think he's got a stream lined up yet. But yeah, hit that like. Really helps out, guys. And share this out. Let people know that you're hanging out with Publicly Buzzed, whether it's on Feral Fridays, whether it's on Thursday, whether it's on Tuesday, or whether it's here on Murder Church. Really, really appreciate it. You guys are the absolute best. Still seeing all the love in chat here. It's crazy. It's amazing. Yeah, week 11. Can you believe that, Nelly? As we continue. And there's a lot here. There is a lot of numbers. It goes all the way to 60. 60, and we're on 30. So we're literally halfway there. So we're looking at about we're coming up on 3 months of this. Yeah, we're looking at about 6 months just thinking about it. Let me make sure my mic's still working in here. Yes, okay. But yeah, you guys are amazing. You guys are unbelievable. Yeah, Tuesday night, I will see everybody in Jay's chat, I'm sure. And if you're not hanging out, if you're not subbed to Jay, drop that in the chat there. Boom, make sure you're doing so. I'm going to figure out this week's shows, see who I can get on, see what we're going to be covering, doing, as the true crime world continues to just be an unpredictable world indeed. KMQ, see you. Happy birthday, belated, yes again. Not belated because we were actually wishing happy birthday on your... I'm rambling. Okay, thank you all so much. Love everybody. Have a good Sunday. Keep an eye on Twitter. Keep an eye on the community in YouTube. You never know what's going down. I love you guys.
See, we shoot them up bang bang over here. We not scared of they motherfucking ass.